My husband Bob and I are in our second year of marriage. While I may not excel in many areas, cooking is my forte. Your cooking is really delicious, Bob once said. That compliment, given on the lunch I prepared for our first date, was what made me fall for him. After 6 months of dating, we got married, and I left my job to become a full-time housewife. About a year ago, my father-in-law passed away, leaving just my mother-in-law, Bob, and me living together. I had hoped we could experience some time alone as newlyweds, even briefly, but when Bob said, "Mom's been feeling vulnerable since Dad passed away," I couldn't refuse. Shortly after starting our married life, I realized my mother-in-law didn't like me. I had encountered bullies at my old job, but she was worse. She constantly found fault with everything I did. While I was cleaning, she would point out every tiny spot I missed and say, "What's this brown spot? Can't you see it?" Once, she forced me to try to remove an unremovable stain from the floor, making me scrub it repeatedly. I wasn't allowed to stop until Bob came home from work. She would wake me up in the middle of the night and demand, "We're almost out of plastic wrap. Go and buy some now. Otherwise, I won't be able to sleep just thinking about it." Since the grocery store was closed, I had to run to the nearest convenience store. If I tried to wake Bob, she would explode in anger, saying, "How dare you wake your tired husband? House chores are the wife's job." To avoid her wrath, I had no choice but to obey. These midnight errands were physically exhausting, but having my belongings thrown away or hidden was even more mentally draining. "I don't know where your stuff is. Maybe you left it somewhere," she would say whenever I couldn't find my things. It's awful to blame others for your own mistakes. I can never forget how shocked I was when I found my favorite cardigan in the trash can a few days later. When I told Bob what happened, he just sighed heavily. "Well, you can just buy a new one," he said. I also tried in vain to persuade him to talk to her. Not knowing what else to do, I bought a safe with the money I'd saved before marrying Bob. I kept my belongings out of her sight, especially my valuables, which I stored in the safe. It's crazy to distrust your own family like you do. I'd like to see the face of the person who raised you. Her harsh tone intensified, and every time she opened her mouth, I had to brace myself for the inevitable verbal attack. She criticized every meal I cooked, saying, "Too bland," or "No taste at all." When I tried to make the dishes more flavorful, she complained they were too spicy. I began to doubt my cooking skills and couldn't help asking my husband for his opinion on the taste. "Mom has very strong food preferences. I think it's delicious," he said. Cooking, once a joy, became a chore. After a year of enduring my mother-in-law's bullying, I had an epiphany. Staying home all the time was the problem. Realizing this, I decided to start working part-time. I had quit my job to be a housewife as Bob requested when we got married, but if staying at home was this painful, I wouldn't have left it so easily. Despite a slight gap in my career, I was valued for my quick learning skills at my part-time job, and it simply felt good to be praised again. However, as I spent less time at home, my mother-in-law began to focus her harassment during breakfast and dinner times. She used to eat despite her complaints, but started leaving most of the food untouched, barely taking a bite before leaving the table. I lost count of the times she accidentally knocked over her soup bowl. When I swallowed my pride and asked her what was wrong with the meal, she'd laugh and say, "You think asking will solve everything, don't you? Why don't you try thinking for yourself?" I was left alone to clean up her leftovers at the dinner table. One day, my mother-in-law really crossed the line. While we were having dinner, she suddenly stood up, took her plate in her hand, and headed to the kitchen. As I looked up in surprise, our eyes met, and she smirked. "What?" By the time I realized what was happening, she had already thrown the meal I made into the trash can. "This is such an awful-looking meal. Even dog food would look better than this," she scoffed. I looked at Bob in disbelief, but he just ignored me and continued eating. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, so I rushed to the trash can. I opened its lid and stared at the ruined food. "This is terrible." I turned around to see Bob, but he wouldn't even look at me. She probably wasn't feeling well. He dismissed his mother's actions. How could she throw the food away right in front of the person who made it? I asked, growing more upset. Bob scratched his head in annoyance and said, "Look, I have work tomorrow. Unlike you with your part-time job, I'm a full-time employee working hard from morning to night. What's wrong with doing a part-time job? I work, cook at home, and then have my cooking thrown away by your mother." My voice broke with emotion, and he sighed deeply. "Lisa, you're becoming a nag. Mom's probably irritated by your nagging too. you know. And if it's that bad, then you shouldn't be cooking anymore. After saying that, Bob walked into his bedroom, leaving me staring at his back in disbelief. At that moment, I finally realized he didn't care about me at all. Something inside of me just snapped. The next day, I prepared breakfast as usual and let both Bob and my mother-in-law know it was ready. Bob sat down to eat, but my mother-in-law grabbed her plate and said, "Not even a dog would eat this in the morning," then threw her breakfast in the trash can. Without a word, I stood up and took away the breakfast I prepared for Bob. "What?" he said, looking bewildered. "I will have it." I quickly sat down and started eating his breakfast, ignoring my mother-in-law's actions and Bob's growing frustration. "Hey, why are you eating my breakfast? What are you doing?" they both exclaimed. I looked at them innocently and replied, "Well, since your mother said a dog wouldn't even eat this, you shouldn't be eating it either. I'll take responsibility for what I made and eat it myself." "No, I didn't say that. But you didn't deny what your mother said, did you?" Bob opened his mouth but seemed unable to find anything to say. "Lisa, stop talking nonsense and make Bob's breakfast," my mother-in-law snapped. I looked straight at her with a smile. "I'm very sorry that I have been serving you the sort of food that a dog wouldn't even eat. Don't worry, I won't cook for you ever again." I grabbed my knife and fork, finished eating breakfast, and stood up. Bob said, "Wait, Lisa, what about my breakfast?" "Eat whatever you like," I replied, then left the house quickly. I usually return home around 5 p.m., but that day I had a few errands to run after work, so by the time I got home it was already past 8 p.m. "Oh, you're very late. We've been waiting for you. Really, where on earth have you been?" Bob and my mother-in-law complained, looking very hungry. "Oh, haven't you two eaten yet? I already had my dinner." My mother-in-law's face turned red with surprise and anger. "How dare you eat alone?" "Well, I did say I wouldn't cook for you anymore. Or were you looking forward to my terrible cooking?" "How dare you talk back to me like that?" she shouted, slamming the table in frustration. But then she quickly regained her composure and came up with what she thought was a brilliant idea. "If you're not cooking, then return the food money. Bob has been paying for all the living expenses, so you should pay him back every penny you spend on your food." I couldn't help but laugh at her confident declaration. "What's so funny?" she demanded. "Since I started working part-time, I've been paying not just for food but all living expenses." It was Bob's suggestion. I turned to him. "Mom isn't happy about your working, but if you pay the living expenses, it might calm her down," he had said to me. It had been over a year since I started my part-time job, which means I had been covering the living expenses for the last half of our married life. My mother-in-law, apparently unaware of this, looked shocked and turned to Bob. "Is that true, Bob?" "Well, you wanted more pocket money," Bob mumbled weakly, making excuses. He had me cover the living expenses so he could use the extra money for his mother's allowance. "You seem to have been spending quite a lot on extravagant meals." In the mailbox, I found a flyer for regular customers at an upscale restaurant. I had thought my mother-in-law made her own lunch, but after seeing the flyer, I had my suspicions and found some receipts from that restaurant in the trash. Shouldn't the proper thing be to pay back all the living expenses I've provided? After all, it was my hard-earned money. "Don't worry, I'll be sure to bill you properly," I said with a bright smile to my mother-in-law, who was trembling with anger. "Hey, what do you mean by billing?" Bob, perhaps sensing something, turned pale and stood up. "I want a divorce, and of course, I'll make sure I ask for alimony." "Divorce?" he muttered in shock, but then brightened up, thinking he found a flaw in my plan. "Do you think you can afford to live on your own with what you earn from your part-time job?" He probably thought I would struggle financially. "About that part-time job, I've been offered a full-time position." "What?" "I've also decided where I'll live." My actual plan was to commute from my parents' home for a while, I said, watching the realization dawn on him. "I'll get my lawyer to handle the proceedings from now on." With those words, I went to my bedroom and grabbed the luggage I had packed the night before. Bob, still in shock, stood frozen by the dining table. I ignored him and walked past. "Lisa, I'm sorry," he called out, making me stop and turn around. "Sorry for what? What do you mean?" I asked, exasperated. "It was hard to take sides between you and Mom." "I never said anything bad about your cooking, did I?" he replied. He doesn't understand anything at all. In the end, I truly realized I had been blind. It's not about taking sides. You chose to say nothing when the food was being thrown away and when I was being harassed by your mother over and over. Despite my pleas, you never helped me. Your playing the victim doesn't change the fact that you hurt me. I reproved him. Bob started crying bitterly. Seeing the gravity of his sorrow, I quickly glanced at the pathetic man and headed toward the front door. As I reached for the door, my mother-in-law called out to stop me. I never intended for things to get this bad. I was amazed at how oblivious she was to the severity of her actions. I've looked after you all this time, and it's disappointing that the last thing I hear from you is such an excuse-like response. From now on, you won't have to worry about being caught for spending a lot of money on delicious meals. My mother-in-law stood frozen, her eyes wide open as if her breath had stopped. I returned to my parents' house, where they warmly welcomed me, already aware of my situation. According to my lawyer, everyone in the neighborhood knew my mother-in-law was incapable of household chores. Apparently, my father-in-law had managed the housework when he was still alive. After his passing, Bob, now my ex-husband, and his mother lived on takeout and eating out. To them, I was a convenient housekeeper to exploit. The news about our divorce quickly spread throughout the town. Eventually, it reached Bob's bosses and colleagues, causing him considerable embarrassment. Bob and his mother are now in financial trouble, having hardly saved any money and squandering it all. They are panicking over the alimony they owe me. Now that everybody knows about their mistreatment of me, finding a new housekeeper has become impossible. They can't even afford the kind of meals they used to have. Bob, unrelenting, kept texting and asking if we could get back together. I also received messages from my mother-in-law filled with excuses, but they were repetitive and uninteresting, so I stopped reading them. Now, I enjoy cooking for my family, making sweets and baking cakes on weekends. I often share my creations with my colleagues. Surrounded by those who appreciate my cooking, I believe this will help restore my confidence. With this new hope, my heart swells with anticipation.
The house is going to be foreclosed, Nina. We're going to lose everything. Mom's voice was a shriek, cracking on the last word as she burst through my apartment door, Dad trailing behind her, his face a mask of carefully curated despair. I'm Nina, by the way. And everything, or in this case, meant the rambling old house I'd poured more of my own money into than I cared to admit. The one they lived in, rent-free, while I juggled 2 jobs to keep my own tiny place afloat and still send them cash for essentials. I was, as they'd always called me, the responsible one. Foreclosed? What are you talking about? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady as I ushered them towards my worn-out sofa. My heart was already thumping a familiar rhythm of anxiety. I just sent you money for the property taxes last month. You said everything was fine. It was! We thought it was, Dad said, his voice a low rumble of feigned sorrow. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. But then the inspector came, for the insurance renewal, you know, and he found problems, big problems. Mom nodded, her eyes wide and glistening. It's the foundation, darling. He said it's crumbling, and the roof needs replacing entirely. And apparently, the entire electrical system is a death trap, a fire waiting to happen. She waved a crumpled piece of paper vaguely in my direction. The inspector said it's catastrophic. Tens of thousands, Nina. Maybe more. Money we just don't have. I stared at them, a cold dread seeping into my bones. Tens of thousands? How did it get this bad without you noticing? It just crept up on us, sweetie, Mom said, her voice trembling. You know how old houses are. Dad sighed heavily. We went to the bank, of course, everywhere. No one will give us a loan, not with the house in its current state, not with our credit being what it is after that business with the car. Mom started to sob then, actual tears this time, big, messy ones that dripped onto her expensive-looking, and probably new, silk blouse. We're going to be homeless, Nina, at our age. But, Dad interjected, leaning forward, his eyes suddenly sharp beneath the worried brow, a flicker of something I couldn't quite name. There's a special kind of hardship loan, a government thing, very low interest. It's our only hope. But the catch is, the property needs to be solely in the names of the primary residents who are facing the hardship, the ones living there, enduring the conditions. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. Solely in your names? But I own a third of it. Grandma left it to all three of us, remember? Equal shares? Exactly, Mom sniffled, dabbing at her eyes with the tissue that appeared magically from her sleeve. That's the problem, you see. Your share, it complicates things for the application. They see you as having other assets, a job. It makes us look less needy. So what we need you to do, Pumpkin, Dad said, his voice softening into that familiar, persuasive tone he used when he wanted something big, is just sign your share over to us. Temporarily, of course. Just so we can secure this loan, get the repairs done, and save the house. Our home. Your inheritance eventually. My stomach twisted. Sign it over? The words felt like ash in my mouth. This wasn't just about a piece of paper. It was about years of my life. I thought of the new boiler I'd paid for 2 winters ago, the one that cost nearly $5,000, when theirs packed up in the middle of a blizzard, and they'd called me, shivering dramatically, from beneath a pile of blankets. I remembered the emergency plumbing work last spring that had eaten up my entire vacation fund, the one I'd been saving for 3 years to finally see the ocean. They'd promised to pay me back, of course. They always did. The countless weekends I'd spent there, paint splattered and exhausted, regrouting tiles in the bathroom, patching drywall in the hallway, wrestling with the ancient fuse box that blew if you dared run the microwave and the kettle at the same time. All while they offered helpful suggestions from the porch swing, lemonade in hand, or conveniently disappeared on errands whenever the actual heavy lifting started. It's just a formality, sweetie, Dad said, his voice oozing a practiced reassurance that usually worked on me. A piece of paper? To save our legacy? Your grandmother would have wanted this. She loved that house more than anything. Please, Nina, Mom whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears as she reached for my hand. Her rings, always a little too flashy for their supposed financial struggles, dug into my skin. We're desperate. We'll lose everything. The memories, your grandmother's beautiful garden, all gone. Her lower lip trembled, a performance perfected over decades. You wouldn't want that on your conscience, would you? To be the reason we end up on the street, after all we've done for you? The air in my small living room felt thick, suffocating with their manufactured despair. Their combined gaze was a physical weight, pressing down on me. They looked so broken, so genuinely terrified, or at least they were very, very good actors. I'd always been a sucker for their performances, the dutiful daughter rushing in to fix things, to smooth things over, to sacrifice her own needs for theirs. The responsible one always cleaned up the mess, no matter how big, no matter who made it. I looked from Mom's tear-streaked face to Dad's pleading eyes. The sheer panic radiating from them felt real, contagious. Okay, I heard myself say, the words scraping my throat. Okay, I'll think about it. Let me see the paperwork from the inspector and the loan application details. All of it. Mom's face crumpled in relief, a watery smile breaking through. Oh, thank you, Nina. You're a lifesaver. Our angel. Dad clapped his hands together, a booming sound in the small space. We knew we could count on you, Pumpkin. Always our sensible girl. They were all smiles and effusive gratitude as they finally left, promising to email everything over immediately. But as the door clicked shut behind them, a cold knot formed in my stomach, a familiar ache of doubt. The performance had been a little too polished, the tears a little too convenient, the solutions a little too neat. A tiny, insistent voice, one I'd learned to ignore over the years for the sake of peace, for the sake of what I thought was family loyalty, whispered, "Is this real?" It was a question I couldn't shake, a sliver of ice in the warmth of their supposed relief, and for the first time in a very long time, I decided I wasn't going to ignore it. That little voice didn't just whisper, it started to shout. The next morning, the promised email arrived. It contained a blurry photo of a generic-looking inspection report with lots of red ink and a link to a very official-sounding Federal Emergency Home Preservation Grant. It all looked plausible. Too plausible, almost. My parents weren't exactly known for their organizational skills, yet here was everything, neatly packaged. "What do you think?" I asked Genesis, my best friend, over coffee later that day. I'd forwarded her the email. She scrolled through it on her phone, her brow furrowed. Genesis said, tapping her chin. "The report looks scary, sure, but catastrophic, and they only just noticed? And this grant, it seems legit, but the part about needing sole ownership for hardship feels a bit convenient for them, doesn't it?" "Exactly," I said, relieved someone else saw it. "They want me to sign over my third, just like that." Genesis leaned back, her expression thoughtful. "Nina, you've bailed them out how many times? Remember the investment opportunity with their friend Barry that went south? Or the time Dad decided he was going to be a day trader?" I winced. "Don't remind me." "Look," she said, her voice firm but kind. "You love them? I get it. But this is a huge deal. Your grandmother wanted you to have that share for a reason. Before you sign anything, you need to talk to a professional. A real one, not their buddy from the golf club, who probably drew up their wills on a napkin." Her words solidified the resolve that had been hardening in my gut. That afternoon, instead of calling the lawyer my parents had vaguely mentioned they'd be using, "A lovely man, very understanding of our situation," Mom had cooed, I made an appointment with Adrian. His name had come up a few times in local business circles, always accompanied by words like sharp, thorough, and doesn't suffer fools. Exactly what I needed. Adrian's office was sleek and modern, a stark contrast to the dusty, cluttered spaces I associated with my parents' various advisors. He listened patiently as I laid out the whole story, from the years of helping out to the current crisis. I showed him the email, the blurry report, the grant information. He leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against a legal pad. "So they claim the house is about to fall down. They need this specific grant, and to get it, you need to relinquish your share. And they'll, of course, add you back to the deed once the crisis is averted?" "That's the story," I confirmed, feeling a flush of embarrassment at how naive it sounded when laid out so clinically. "And you've poured significant personal funds into this property over the years? Do you have records of those expenditures?" "Some," I admitted. "Bank statements, receipts for the big things like the boiler. Not for every can of paint or weekend I spent fixing leaky faucets, but the major stuff, yes." Adrian nodded slowly. "Interesting." He looked at me, a flicker of something more than professional interest in his eyes. "You're not convinced by their story, are you?" "My gut is screaming," I confessed. "But what if I'm wrong? What if they really are about to lose the house, and I'm just being cynical because of past experiences?" "Cynicism can be a healthy survival mechanism, especially when dealing with consistently unreliable parties," Adrian said, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "Let's assume, for a moment, your gut is right. Let's assume this is less about saving the house and more about consolidating assets. If you sign a standard quitclaim deed, your share is gone. Poof, irrevocable." My blood ran cold. "So what can I do? I don't want to be the reason they lose the house if it's true, but I also don't want to be a fool." "We can draft an agreement," Adrian said, leaning forward. "One that acknowledges the transfer for the specific purpose of securing this alleged grant and completing these alleged repairs. But we can also include a clause, a very specific, very binding clause. Something that protects your equitable interest should the stated urgent need prove to be misrepresented, or if the property is subsequently sold or leveraged in a way that doesn't align with the spirit of this rescue mission." A spark of hope, fierce and unexpected, ignited within me. "You can do that?" "I can certainly draft it," he said. "The key will be in the wording, and in them signing it without too much scrutiny." Over the next few days, Adrian and I worked on the wording. He was brilliant, anticipating loopholes I would never have dreamed of. The clause was a masterpiece of legal subtlety, couched in language that sounded like standard protective measures but held a potent sting in its tail. It stipulated that if the property was sold within a certain time frame for a significant profit, or if the premise of imminent foreclosure due to catastrophic disrepair was found to be false, my original share would not only be reinstated, but I would be entitled to a significant penalty payment from their proceeds due to the misrepresentation and emotional distress caused. The signing was scheduled for Saturday morning at their house. "Just a quick pop-over, sweetie, so we can get this to the grant office first thing Monday," Mom had chirped over the phone. I arrived, my heart hammering against my ribs, the carefully drafted documents in my briefcase. Adrian had advised me to present it as just some standard paperwork my lawyer recommended to ensure everything is above board for everyone. They were practically vibrating with eagerness. Dad had the pen ready before I even sat down at the kitchen table. Mom was already talking about what color they should paint the living room once the dust settled. "Here you go," I said, my voice surprisingly steady as I handed them the sheaf of papers. My lawyer just added a small addendum, standard stuff, just to protect everyone's interests, make sure the transfer is clearly for the purpose we discussed. I tried to sound breezy, unconcerned. Dad barely glanced at it. Right, sensible. Always our sensible girl." He flipped to the last page, found the signature line next to my name, and gestured. "You sign here, and then we'll sign." Mom was already humming, peering out the window at her rose bushes. "I do hope the repairs don't disturb the prize winners." I took a deep breath and signed, my hands surprisingly steady. Then I pushed the papers towards Dad. He scrawled his signature, then Mom did hers, a flourish of loops and curls. They didn't even pause on the addendum page, the one with Adrian's carefully constructed trap. Their eyes skipped right over the dense paragraph titled, "Conditions of Transfer and Equitable Resolution in Case of Misrepresentation of Urgent Need or Premature Sale." They were too focused on the prize, too eager to get their hands on what they thought was solely theirs. A strange mix of dread and grim satisfaction coursed through me as I watched them. They folded their copies, beaming. "Well, that's that," Dad said, clapping me on the shoulder. "You've saved the day, Nina. Again." Did they even read it? I wondered as I drove away, their cheerful waves receding in my rearview mirror. Did they absorb a single word of the clause that could bring their whole scheme crashing down? I doubted it. Their greed had made them careless. Now, we wait. The waiting was the worst. Days turned into a week, then 2. My calls to Mom and Dad started going straight to voicemail. "We're just swamped with the grant paperwork, sweetie," Mom trilled in a message she left after my 4th attempt. "And the contractors are already giving us quotes. Such a whirlwind." It sounded rehearsed, overly bright. An icy dread began to crystallize in my chest, sharp and cold. Then, exactly 3 weeks and 2 days after I'd signed that paper, my social media feed exploded. It was a bright, sunny Tuesday morning. I was scrolling through Instagram, procrastinating before starting work, when a picture stopped my thumb mid-swipe. It was Mom. She was standing on the deck of a massive cruise ship, a wide-brimmed hat perched jauntily on her head, a champagne flute raised in a toast. Behind her, the ocean stretched out, impossibly blue. Dad was beside her, arms slung around her shoulder, grinning like he'd won the lottery. The caption read, "Bon voyage, finally enjoying the fruits of our smart investments. Blessed retirement, goals, living our best life." My coffee cup clattered into its saucer. My blood didn't just run cold, it felt like it turned to slush in my veins. Smart investments? What smart investments? Their last smart investment involved a timeshare presentation they'd endured for a free dinner and nearly signed up for. I clicked on Mom's profile. More pictures. Them clinking glasses at a fancy onboard restaurant. Dad posing with a comically large lobster. Mom getting a massage, her face a mask of serene bliss. Each photo was a fresh stab. The dates on the posts showed they'd been on this cruise for nearly a week already. A week of swamped with grant paperwork and contractors. My hands started to shake. I switched to Dad's profile. It was even worse. He'd posted a video of their cabin, a suite, by the looks of it, complete with a balcony and a bottle of champagne chilling in an ice bucket. Working hard or hardly working, he'd captioned it with a winking emoji. Then, the final blow. I was still reeling, my mind struggling to process the sheer audacity of it, when a notification popped up from a local real estate group I followed. "Just sold," the post screamed in cheerful red letters, accompanied by a picture of our family home. My family home. The one supposedly crumbling into ruin, needing tens of thousands in emergency repairs to avoid foreclosure. It looked pristine, the lawn perfectly manicured, a cheerful sold banner plastered across the for sale sign I hadn't even known was there. The sale price, listed right beneath the picture, made my jaw drop. It was nearly double what I'd always assumed the house was worth, even in good condition. The betrayal was a physical blow, winding me. I felt the air leave my lungs in a ragged gasp. They hadn't just lied, they'd orchestrated this whole elaborate charade, played on my loyalty, my sense of responsibility, my love for them, all to cash out and abandon everything, including, it seemed, me. The casual cruelty of their posts, flaunting their newfound wealth while I was still under the illusion I'd helped them save their home, twisted the knife deeper. "No," I whispered, scrolling frantically through their feeds, saving every picture, every boastful caption, every damning timestamp. My fingers fumbled on the screenshot buttons, a rage so profound, so cold, it was almost calm, settling over me. This wasn't just deceit. This was a meticulously planned heist of my inheritance and my trust. I immediately called Genesis, my voice trembling. "You are not going to believe this." "What's wrong? You sound awful," she said, concern lacing her tone. "They sold the house," I choked out. "They're on a luxury cruise. They posted pictures." "What?" Genesis's shriek was loud enough to make me pull the phone from my ear. "Those absolute... I can't even say the words. After everything you did? After they cried poverty to you?" "It's all there, Jen. Online. For everyone to see." I forwarded her the links, the screenshots. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. Then, "Oh, Nina. Oh, honey, I am so sorry. These people, they're unbelievable." Her indignation was a small, fierce comfort in the roaring inferno of my own anger. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the screenshot of Mom, beaming, champagne in hand, with the caption, "Living our best life, free from burdens." The only burden they'd freed themselves from was the pretense of caring about anyone but themselves. "I'm going to call Adrian," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "And then I'm going to make them regret every single celebratory selfie." Just then, my phone pinged with another notification. Dad had posted again. A picture of them at a casino table on the ship, chips piled high in front of him. He was winking at the camera, holding up a winning hand of cards. The caption, "Lady Luck is on our side. Some sacrifices are worth it for this kind of freedom. No regrets." Oh, they'll have regrets, I thought, a bitter smile touching my lips. They just don't know it yet. The game wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. My first instinct, after the initial wave of fury and the call to Genesis, was to reach out to Camila, my younger sister. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe she'd be as horrified as I was. We weren't super close. She'd always been Mom and Dad's golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while I was the reliable, slightly boring older sister. But still, this was family, or what was left of it. I called her. It rang 5 times before she picked up, her voice breezy and distracted. "Hey, Nina, what's up?" "Camila, have you seen Mom and Dad's social media lately?" I tried to keep my voice even, neutral. "Oh yeah, the cruise. Looks amazing, right? So glad they're finally getting a break. They really deserved it after all that stress with the house." My stomach clenched. Stress with the house? Camila, they sold the house. There was a pause. Well, yeah, that was the plan, wasn't it? To get something smaller, more manageable? Mom said it was just too much for them, all that upkeep. No, Camila, I said, my patience fraying. The plan, the one they told me, was that the house was falling apart and they needed me to sign over my share so they could get an emergency grant to fix it and avoid foreclosure, not so they could sell it for a massive profit and go on a luxury cruise. Another pause, longer this time. Oh, well, Mom did say something about you helping them out with some paperwork. She said you were being really understanding. Her voice was laced with a faint, almost accusatory tone, as if Anne were the one causing trouble. You were always so worried about that old house, Nina. Maybe it's for the best. They seem really happy. It was like talking to a brick wall that had been thoroughly brainwashed. The sting of her dismissal, her casual acceptance of their lies, was sharper than I expected. Happy? Camila, they lied to me. They manipulated me. Look, Nina, she said, her voice taking on that slightly impatient edge she always used when she thought I was being dramatic. I don't really want to get in the middle of this. They're adults. You're an adult. I'm sure there's just been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Right. I ended the call, a cold resignation settling in. No ally there. Just another person happy to swallow the narrative Mom and Dad spoon-fed them. My next call was to Adrian. I forwarded him all the screenshots, the real estate listing, everything. Well, 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 he said, his voice devoid of surprise, but carrying a distinct undertone of professional satisfaction. It seems your parents are not only deceitful, but also remarkably ostentatious about it. This is quite blatant. Blatant is an understatement, I said, pacing my apartment. They're practically rubbing it in my face. So, the clause, does this trigger it? The sale itself, for such a significant profit, certainly strengthens our position regarding the misrepresentation of urgent need, Adrian explained. We have clear evidence they weren't facing foreclosure due to disrepair. They were planning a lucrative sale. The social media posts are gold, by the way. Pure, unadulterated proof of their intentions and the subsequent use of the funds derived from your share. So, we can act now? I asked, eager for a fight. We could, Adrian said thoughtfully. But the clause, as we drafted it, has an even stronger trigger. It's designed to activate most powerfully if they attempt to reinvest or liquidate significant portions of the sale proceeds, particularly into new, large assets, especially if those proceeds were acquired through demonstrable misrepresentation. Selling the house and going on a cruise is bad. Using the bulk of that money to buy, say, a new property, after explicitly stating they needed it for repairs on the old one, that's the kill shot. So, we wait for them to spend more of it? The thought was agonizing. Every new picture they posted, them posing with dolphins, them at a local artisan market, buying overpriced souvenirs, them raising yet another cocktail to their freedom, was like a fresh twist of the knife. Each boast felt like a personal insult. Patience, Nina, Adrian advised, his voice calm and reassuring. Their arrogance is our ally here. People like this, when they get a sudden windfall through deceit, rarely sit on it quietly. They want to show it off, to convert it into something tangible that screams success. Let them dig their own hole a little deeper. We have them on the misrepresentation already. Now we wait for them to cement their fraudulent intent by trying to make the money theirs in a more permanent way than a vacation. The waiting game was torture. I unfollowed them on social media, but the damage was done. Their smiling, carefree faces were burned into my retinas. Genesis was a rock, calling every day, letting me vent, reminding me that Adrian knew what he was doing. Then about a week after they returned from their cruise, tanned, laden with duty-free bags, and insufferably smug, according to a very brief, very strained phone call I endured with Mom where she mostly talked about the divine weather, Camila called. There was a new note in her voice, a slight edge of confusion, maybe even concern. Nina? Hi. Weird question. What is it, Camila? I asked, trying to keep the weariness out of my voice. Mom and Dad they're talking about buying a condo in Florida, like a really fancy one on the beach. My heart gave a small, vicious leap. They said they're paying cash, Camila continued, her voice dropping a little. Is that normal after they nearly lost the house and everything? I mean, where did all that money suddenly come from? The bait, so carefully laid, was almost taken. What do you think, Camila? I asked softly. Where do you think it came from? Mom and Dad swept back into town like conquering heroes returning from a victorious campaign, except their spoils were my inheritance and their battlefield was my trust. They were tanned, radiating an almost aggressive level of self-satisfaction and dripping with small, expensive-looking trinkets. Mom had a new designer handbag, picked up for a song at a little boutique on that adorable island, and Dad sported a flashy new watch he claimed was an investment. They invited themselves over for dinner a few days after Camila's call. Just to catch up, sweetie. We've missed you, Mom chirped over the phone, her voice syrupy sweet. I agreed, steeling myself. This was reconnaissance. The evening was an exercise in supreme hypocrisy. They talked endlessly about their fabulous trip and their newfound financial acumen. Dad, swirling a glass of my cheap red wine as if it were a vintage Bordeaux, actually said, You know, Nina, you really should learn to be smarter with your money. We've learned a thing or two about making it work for us. I just smiled tightly and refilled his glass. Oh, I'm learning, Dad. I'm learning a lot. Camila was there too, looking increasingly uncomfortable. She'd been quiet on the phone after her Florida condo revelation, but I could tell she was watching them, really watching them, for the first time. They, of course, were oblivious, basking in what they assumed was her usual adoration and my quiet compliance. We're thinking of downsizing officially, Mom announced, carefully dabbing her lips with a napkin. That old house was just an anchor, wasn't it, Donald? A money pit, Eloise, a complete money pit, Dad agreed solemnly, conveniently forgetting the actual money pit had been their lifestyle, funded by my contributions. Time to be practical, enjoy our golden years. Camila picked at her salad. So, the condo in Florida? Is that definite? Mom beamed. Oh, we're very close, darling. Found the most perfect little place, right on the beach. Can you imagine? Waking up to the sound of the ocean every day? And it's all cash. No mortgage nonsense, Dad added, puffing out his chest. That's the way to do it. Financial freedom. But what about all the repairs the old house needed, Camila asked, her voice small but clear. Mom, you said it was practically falling down. Mom waved a dismissive hand, her new gold bangles jangling. Oh, you know how inspectors exaggerate, sweetie. A lick of paint here, a tightened screw there. The new owners are young, full of energy. They'll sort it. I saw Camila's eyes narrow almost imperceptibly. She looked at me, a quick searching glance, and I gave a tiny, almost invisible nod. The cracks in their facade were becoming chasms. Later, as I was clearing the plates, Mom followed me into the kitchen. You know, Nina, she said, lowering her voice conspiratorially, your father and I were thinking, now that we're a bit more liquid, perhaps we could give you some advice on investments. You work so hard, it's time you had something to show for it beyond that little shoebox apartment. The audacity was breathtaking. She was offering to advise me on investments with money they'd essentially stolen from me. I forced a polite smile. That's very thoughtful of you, Mom. I'll definitely keep that in mind. We just want you to be secure, like us, she said, patting my arm with a perfectly manicured hand. The scent of her expensive new perfume, something tropical and cloying, filled my small kitchen. The evening wore on, with more talk of their brilliant financial planning and their exciting future. They were so wrapped up in their own narrative, so convinced of their cleverness, They didn't notice Camila's growing silence or the way I just watched them, a silent observer cataloging every lie, every boast. As they were finally leaving, Dad, reeking of the expensive cologne he'd doused himself in, another cruise bargain no doubt, paused at the door. He patted my hand, his expression one of smug benevolence. "Don't you worry your pretty little head about finances, Nina. We've got it covered now. We're experts." He winked. "In fact," he added, his voice dropping as if sharing a thrilling secret, "we just put a hefty, non-refundable deposit down on our dream beachfront condo this afternoon. All cash, of course. Sealed the deal." My heart didn't just leap. It soared. It did a triumphant backflip. That's it. The final, crucial piece. A large, non-refundable cash deposit on a luxury property paid for with the proceeds of the house they'd tricked me out of. This wasn't just spending. This was a clear, undeniable attempt to convert their ill-gotten gains into a significant, tangible asset. Adrian had said this would be the kill shot. "Oh, wow, Dad," I managed, keeping my voice carefully neutral, even impressed. "That's decisive." "Got to be, Pumpkin," he said, puffing up again. "When you see an opportunity, you grab it with both hands. That's what separates the winners from the losers." He squeezed my hand again, then turned to leave, Mom already halfway down the path, calling out about needing to set her alarm early to call the Florida realtor. I closed the door behind them, a slow, predatory smile spreading across my face. "Winners and losers, Dad. We'll see about that." I pulled out my phone, my fingers already dialing Adrian's number. The waiting was officially over. "They did it, Adrian," I said, my voice low and charged, the moment I heard his calm "hello" on the other end of the line. "They put a large, non-refundable cash deposit down on a beachfront condo in Florida. Dad just told me. Bragged about it, actually." There was a beat of silence, then Adrian's voice, crisp and decisive. "That, Nina, is precisely what we've been waiting for. The significant reinvestment of fraudulently obtained funds into a new, substantial asset. It triggers every penalty in that clause we drafted." I could almost hear the satisfaction in his tone. "Do you know the amount or the realtor they used?" "He just said hefty and all cash. Mom mentioned calling the Florida realtor first thing in the morning. I don't have specifics, but they weren't exactly subtle about it." "Subtlety doesn't seem to be their strong suit," Adrian commented dryly. "Don't worry. A non-refundable deposit on a Florida property, especially a cash deal, will leave a very clear paper trail. I can have my investigator look into it immediately. This is good, Nina. This is very good." A wave of something wild and potent washed over me. Adrenaline, yes, but also a sharp, almost painful surge of anticipation mixed with a sliver of fear. This was it. The point of no return. The carefully laid trap was about to spring. "So what happens now?" "Now I confirm the transaction. Once we have proof of that deposit clearing from an account containing the proceeds of the house sale, we move. And we move fast. We'll file for an emergency injunction to freeze their assets based on the fraudulent inducement and the terms of your agreement, the one they so carelessly signed." "Freeze their assets?" I repeated, the words tasting like victory. "Every penny we can tie to the sale of that house," Adrian confirmed. "The cruise might have been paid for, but that Florida dream condo? That's about to become a very expensive nightmare for them." We talked for another 20 minutes, going over the plan, the next steps. Adrian was methodical, calm, his confidence a steadying balm to my jangling nerves. When I hung up, my hands were trembling slightly, but not from fear. It was the thrum of impending justice. I barely slept that night, my mind racing. The next morning I was jumpy, checking my phone every 5 minutes. Around lunchtime it rang. It wasn't Adrian. It was Camila. Her voice was choked with tears. "Nina! Oh, Nina, it's awful!" "Camila, what's wrong? What happened?" My heart lurched. Had something happened to them? A different kind of awful? I had a huge fight with Mom and Dad. she sobbed. I confronted them about the house, about the money, about Florida. I told them what you said, about the Grant story they fed you. And, I prompted gently, my own anger momentarily forgotten in the face of her distress. They lost it, Camilla wailed. Dad started yelling, saying I was ungrateful, that I didn't understand business. Mom just cried and said I was taking your side, that you were trying to cause trouble, that you were jealous of their happiness. Jealous? The word was so absurd, it was almost funny. And then, Camilla's voice dropped to a horrified whisper, Dad, he was so angry, he just blurted it out. He said, your sister was always a naive fool. She practically begged us to take that worthless share off her hands. We did her a favor getting rid of that money pit. And Mom nodded. She said, exactly, Donald. She never appreciated what we had to deal with. A cold silence descended. He'd said it, admitted it, not just the lie, but the contempt behind it. Camilla, I said softly, are you okay? No, I'm not okay, she cried. They lied about everything, Nina. Everything. They made you out to be the bad guy, and all along. They were the ones. I feel so stupid. I believed them. I defended them to you. Her voice broke. I am so sorry, Nina. I was so wrong. They're not who I thought they were. The raw pain in her voice was undeniable. For the first time, I felt a pang of something other than anger towards my sister. She was a victim, too, in her own way, of their lifelong manipulation. It's okay, Camilla, I said, and I meant it, mostly. They're very good at what they do. Is there anything I can do? She asked, her voice small and shaky. To help you? I mean, I don't have much, but just knowing you see it now, Camilla, that helps, I told her. Stay out of the line of fire. This is going to get messy. I can't believe them, she whispered. They were so smug, so happy about tricking you. We talked a little longer, Camilla pouring out more of her disillusionment and hurt. It was a strange conversation, a tentative step across a chasm that had separated us for years. By the time we hung up, I felt a small, bittersweet sense of validation. One member of my family, at least, finally saw the truth. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. It was Adrian. His voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable current of excitement beneath it. We have it, Nina, he said. Confirmation of a wire transfer for a substantial six-figure sum from their main checking account, the one the house sale proceeds went into, to a Florida escrow company. The deposit for one beachfront condominium, as described. He paused. Papers are drawn up. They'll be served tomorrow morning. Your parents mentioned to Camilla during their discussion that they were attending an exclusive investors brunch at the Grandview Hotel. Apparently, they're looking to network with other savvy financial minds. An exclusive investors brunch. The irony was so thick I could have spread it on toast. Are you ready for this? Adrian asked, his voice steady. I took a deep breath, the image of their smug, triumphant faces flashing in my mind. The years of being the responsible one, the one who sacrificed, the one who was taken for granted. It all coalesced into a single, hard point of resolve. Adrian, I said, my voice clear and unwavering. I was born ready for this. I didn't go to the Grandview Hotel. Adrian had offered, suggesting I might want to witness it, but I declined. Some victories are best savored from a distance. Instead, I sat in my tiny apartment, a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands, and imagined the scene. Camilla, racked with guilt and a strange, horrified curiosity, had decided to tag along with Mom and Dad to the brunch. She promised to text me updates, a reluctant spy in the enemy camp. The first text came at 11:03 a.m. Here, Mom's wearing that awful new hat. Dad's already schmoozing with some guy in a shiny suit. I pictured them. Eloise, preening, her voice artificially bright as she networked, probably dropping unsubtle hints about their Florida place. Donald, expansive and loud, already on his second complimentary mimosa, holding court about his knack for spotting an opportunity. They'd be feeling invincible on top of the world, surrounded by people they imagined were their new peers. The irony was delicious. Adrian had timed it perfectly. The process server, a discreet but imposing figure, was instructed to approach them just as the main speaker, some local investment guru, was about to begin his presentation. Maximum audience, maximum impact. 11:28 a.m. Camilla. Oh my God. A man in a suit just walked up to them, handed them a big envelope. Mom looks confused. My heart began to hammer. This was it. 11:29 a.m. Camilla. Dad's opening it. He's frowning. Now he's looking pale. Really pale. I could see it. Dad's jovial expression faltering, the blood draining from his face as he scanned the first page. The legal jargon, the official letterhead, the stark, undeniable words. Nina Waters versus Donald and Eloise Waters. The documents were comprehensive. Adrian had left no stone unturned. Page 1, a summary of the original agreement, the one they'd signed so blithely, highlighting my transfer of share for the sole purpose now of emergency repairs and grant application. Page 2, copies of my bank statements, meticulously detailing years of my financial contributions to the crumbling house. Page 3, a vibrant collage of their own social media posts, the cruise ship, the champagne, the no regrets captions, juxtaposed with the sold listing of the house and its hefty sale price. Evidence of their blatant, joyful misrepresentation. And then the centerpiece, a full, highlighted copy of the conditions of transfer and equitable resolution clause, the one they hadn't bothered to read, the clause that didn't just demand the return of my original 1/3 share. Oh no. It stipulated that due to fraudulent inducement, misrepresentation of urgent need, and the demonstrable emotional and financial distress caused, all assets purchased with or derived from the proceeds of the family home sale were to be immediately frozen. Furthermore, they were liable for 3 times the value of my original share, plus all accrued legal fees. 11:31 a.m. Camilla. Mom just grabbed the papers. Her mouth is open. She looks like she's seen a ghost. People are starting to stare. Their confident smiles, the ones they'd worn like masks for weeks, would be crumbling. Disbelief would be warring with a dawning, sickening horror. The savvy investors around them, the ones they were so eager to impress, would be witnessing their grand facade shatter into a million pieces. 11:33 a.m. Camilla. Dad is yelling, quietly but yelling, at Mom. Something about your stupid idea, and I told you she was too smart. Mom is shaking her head, tears in her eyes. She looks small. Small? That was a word I'd never associated with Eloise. Dominating, manipulative, yes. But small? The power dynamic was shifting, live, in front of an audience of their carefully cultivated new friends. 11:35 a.m. Camilla. Mom just slumped in her chair. I think she might have fainted. Dad is trying to help her up. He's shouting for water. Everyone is looking. This is a disaster. A disaster of their own making. A beautiful, perfectly orchestrated, legally binding disaster. The dream retirement, the Florida condo, the life of leisure built on lies, all imploding in real time at an exclusive investor's brunch. The humiliation must have been exquisite. My phone buzzed. This time it was Adrian. His voice was calm, professional, but I could hear the undertone of triumph. It's done, Nina, he said. They've been served. According to the process server, Mr. Waters became rather agitated. Mrs. Waters required assistance after appearing to lose consciousness briefly. The hotel manager was not pleased with the disruption to his esteemed event. Agitated? I asked, a grim smile playing on my lips. That's the polite term, Adrian said. He was apparently shouting about being set up, about how you tricked them. The irony, it seems, is lost on him. And their accounts? Already flagged. Our injunction request was granted this morning based on the evidence of the Florida deposit. They'll find access to those funds problematic. Their lawyer will be getting a very unpleasant call from them shortly, I imagine, if they can reach him, and if he's willing to take the case once he sees our documentation. I leaned back in my chair, a long, slow breath escaping my lips. The tension that had been coiled inside me for weeks, for months, for years, finally began to unwind. The weight of their deceit, their casual cruelty, their arrogant dismissal of me. It was still there, a scar, but it no longer had the power to crush me. Eloise fainted. Donald was shouting about how I tricked them. The sweet, undeniable irony. It wasn't just justice, it was poetry. The fallout was, as Adrian had predicted, swift and brutal. Their bluster at the brunch dissolved quickly when faced with the cold, hard reality of frozen bank accounts and an ironclad legal agreement. Their lawyer, after one look at the clause and Adrian's meticulously compiled evidence, apparently advised them that fighting it would be financial suicide. They had no room to maneuver. The hefty, non-refundable deposit on the Florida condo? Gone. Kissed goodbye. A painful six-figure lesson in reading the fine print. The court order came through, enforcing the terms of our agreement to the letter. The judgment was for 3 times the value of my original share of the house, plus every penny of Adrian's legal fees. It was a staggering sum, enough to wipe out a significant portion of the profit they'd made from the sale. Their smart investments had turned to ash in their mouths. The social ruin was almost as devastating for them as the financial one. News of the investors' brunch incident spread like wildfire through their small circle of new acquaintances. The story inevitably got embellished. Tales of Eloise's dramatic collapse, Donald's apoplectic rage, the sheer audacity of their con. They went from being the aspirational new couple on the block to social pariahs overnight. No more fancy dinners, no more networking events, just the 4 walls of the modest rental apartment they were forced to move into. A far cry from the beachfront Florida dream. Camila called me a few days after the judgment was finalized. Her voice was subdued, tinged with a sadness that felt genuine. "They're broken, Nina," she said. "Mom just cries all the time. Dad just sits there staring at the TV. He won't talk to me, not really. He keeps muttering about how you ruined them." "They ruined themselves, Camila," I said, my voice firm but not unkind. "I just held them accountable." "I know," she whispered. "I know that now. I brought over some groceries yesterday. Mom barely looked at me. Dad just grunted. It's like the life has gone out of them." She paused. Can I see you? Maybe get coffee?" We met the following Saturday. It was awkward at first. Years of unspoken resentment and her easy acceptance of their narrative hung in the air. But as we talked, really talked, for the first time without the filter of our parents' manipulations, something shifted. She apologized again, more sincerely this time, for not seeing it, for not believing me. "I was so caught up in their version of things," she admitted, stirring her latte. "They always made you sound difficult, too serious. I never questioned it." "They were good at that," I acknowledged. It wasn't an absolution, but it was a start. A fragile, tentative bridge began to form between us. She was still my sister, and beneath the layers of hurt, there was a flicker of the bond we'd once shared as children, before their games had driven such a wedge between us. The money, when it finally landed in my account, was a lot. Far more than my original share, far more than I'd ever imagined having. Looking at the balance felt strange. There was a definite thrum of satisfaction, the righteous vindication of a battle hard won. But there was also an emptiness, a hollow space, where my family, however dysfunctional, used to be. The laughter of my parents, their voices, even their infuriating habits. Those were sounds I'd likely never hear again without a shiver of this bitter memory. Genesis, ever practical, helped me sort through the financial implications. "So," she said, after we'd met with a financial advisor Adrian recommended, What are you going to do with all this justice? I looked out my apartment window at the bustling city below. I was no longer the quiet, dutiful daughter, the one who endlessly sacrificed. That Nina was gone, burned away in the crucible of their betrayal. In her place was someone stronger, yes, perhaps a little more cynical, but also undeniably free. Free from their expectations, their manipulations, their endless needs. I'm going to build something, I said, a new sense of purpose solidifying within me. Something that's truly mine. Maybe that little bakery I've always dreamed of, or maybe I'll finally see the ocean, on my own terms this time. The world felt open, full of possibilities I'd never dared to consider before. The victory wasn't clean, it was messy, tinged with the lingering sorrow of a family shattered, but it was a victory nonetheless. They had gambled with my life, with my trust, with my future, and they had lost spectacularly. Karma, I've learned, isn't always a gentle teacher. Sometimes it's a meticulously drafted legal document, wielded with precision. And while the silence from my parents was profound, a gaping void where their voices used to be, the silence that replaced it, the silence in my own apartment, in my own head, in my own life, was finally, blessedly, my own. I was looking towards a new horizon, one I would shape myself, on my own terms. The price of justice had been high, the sting of betrayal would likely always linger, but the empowerment I found in reclaiming my life, in standing up for myself, that was priceless.
My name is Karen, and at 32 years old, I find myself reflecting on the transformative events of the past few months. 6 months ago, I faced a heart-wrenching loss with the passing of my grandfather, who had been my steadfast guardian and mentor throughout my life. Today is a significant day, as the lawyer is scheduled to reveal the details of my grandfather's will, a moment that feels both heavy and hopeful. Seeking comfort during this emotional time, I am grateful for the presence of my sister, Helen, who is 3 years older than me. We share a bond forged in adversity, having lost our parents in a devastating accident 22 years ago. Since that tragic day, our grandparents took us under their wings, showering us with love and guidance. However, our family felt the sting of loss again when our grandmother died from an illness, leaving us in the caring but increasingly fragile hands of our grandfather. His health declined over the years, and out of deep concern, I moved into an apartment close to his home to ensure I could visit him regularly. Despite my frequent visits, he would often chide me playfully, claiming it was unbecoming for a grown woman to keep returning to her childhood home. Nonetheless, he always greeted me with a smile, his warmth undiminished by the trials of age. Then, during a routine visit, a dire turn of events unfolded as I found my grandfather in severe pain at his doorstep. Frantically, I called for an ambulance, but despite the swift response, he passed away suddenly. Today, as the hour of the will reading approaches, Helen's voice cuts through my contemplation, reminding me to brew some tea for the occasion. As I make my way to the kitchen, I catch a glimpse of her relaxing on the mat, the familiar scent of her strong perfume filling the air, a reminder of her unchanging nature and the continuity of our shared past. I remember my sister Helen's teenage years vividly. She was the epitome of rebellion, experimenting with vibrant hair colors and mingling with a crowd that our grandparents deemed troublesome. Despite the headaches she caused, necessitating frequent apologies from our grandparents, Helen seemed untouched by the disapproval, living her life with a carefree zest. Even as an adult, she maintained that free-spirited approach, working only part-time and often relying on our grandfather for financial support. Today, as the lawyer arrived to read our grandfather's will, I prepared tea to serve. Helen offered a formal greeting that filled the room, acknowledging the gravity of the moment. The lawyer, with his gentle demeanor reminding me of grandfather, accepted the tea and began to disclose the contents of the will. The document revealed that Helen was to inherit a staggering $30 million. while I was bequeathed our family home and the land it stood on. Upon learning about her fortune, Helen burst into laughter, a reaction that left me standing in silent astonishment at the unexpected disparity in our inheritances. While Helen received a literal fortune in cold hard cash, I was left with what appeared to be nothing more than an ancient, rundown house. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me, and I couldn't help but chuckle quietly at the stark contrast in our fortunes. "How fitting for someone as plain as you," Helen teased, her laughter still resonating through the room. I tried to defend the value of my inheritance by pointing out the considerable size of the land that came with the house. "It's not just the house, there's also the land," I countered. Helen snorted dismissively at my comment. The potential value of the land in such a remote, seemingly forgotten place clearly didn't escape her, yet her preference was clear. "Ah, I would have preferred the cash," she remarked with a smirk, clearly pleased with her lot. The complexity of our inheritances mirrored the differences in our personalities and choices, adding a layer of bittersweet humor to the whole ordeal. Reflecting on the distribution of my grandfather's will, I couldn't help but feel a tinge of disappointment mixed with surprise. "I guess Grandpa really had a soft spot for me," I said, trying to mask the uncertainty in my voice. I reasoned with myself that perhaps he intended for me to preserve the cherished family home and land, a place rich with memories of him and my grandmother. "That's pretty awesome, isn't it?" remarked my boyfriend, Alex, catching me off guard with his reaction as I relayed the details of my inheritance. However, his enthusiasm didn't quite resonate with me. I shook my head, implying that the reality wasn't as rosy as it seemed. As I shared the story, a sense of hollowness washed over me. Voicing the situation felt almost like confirming a sort of perceived lesser value. Trying to lighten the atmosphere, Alex made a rather thoughtless comment about the benefits of beauty and wealth. I gave him a sidelong glance, a silent reprimand for his tactlessness. Realizing his faux pas, he quickly shifted gears, joking about valuing my comfort more than material gains. Alex and I had been together since meeting at a social event, and today marked our first casual outing as a couple. Discussing the inheritance made me ponder the future, even imagining him as a potential husband. Little did I know, this revelation would soon lead to an unexpected twist of regret. A few days later, as I entered the old family house to start the overwhelming job of sorting through my grandfather's possessions, I considered the idea of moving in. Its close proximity to my workplace made it an attractive option. Maybe I could really make a life here, even with a cat, I mused. The lack of rent was alluring, and I figured any maintenance costs could be managed with my savings. The thought of sharing this space with Alex even made me blush, embarrassed by my forward thinking. Rolling up my sleeves to begin cleaning, my contemplation was abruptly interrupted by the ringing of my smartphone. Glancing at the display, I saw my sister's name flash across the screen, hinting at more unexpected developments in what was shaping up to be a series of surprising events. "Hello, Karen. How are you faring in that quaint old house of yours?" she inquired, her tone laced with curiosity and a hint of irony. "I hoped you were finding some peace in being alone," I quipped, but it seemed my sister was indulging in a different kind of solace, one marked by rounds of drinks. Her speech always had a tendency to be languid and drawn out, but today it was noticeably more slurred. As she spoke about the time, her words meandered with an alcohol-tinged flair, highlighting her afternoon choice of beverage, which I couldn't help but sigh at. A sigh she echoed dramatically, playfully branding me as the perpetual Miss Goody Two-Shoes. It became obvious that her merriment stemmed from more than just liquor when she asked about my plans for the future. I hesitantly shared my thoughts about possibly moving into our family home, hoping to change the subject. Instead, she took this as an opportunity to flaunt her current luxurious surroundings in a posh hotel suite, her voice dripping with an exaggerated zest. She then teasingly challenged me to guess who might be accompanying her, treating my ignorance with disdain. She provocatively suggested that my reserved attitude might compromise my relationship with someone named Alex. To my shock, Alex himself joined the conversation, leaving me reeling and filled with confusion. As Alex's familiar voice came through, a flood of troubling thoughts overwhelmed me. The sudden revelation of my sister's connection with him sketched a troubling image in my mind, one that had me feeling dizzy and unsettled. She went on to boast about capturing Alex's attention, narrating how she had learned of his workplace from me, approached him after work, and charmed him. Her words poured out boastfully, leaving me stunned and silent. Her subsequent apologies did little to soothe the emotional turmoil I felt. When Alex spoke again to explain his side, a chill swept over me, draining my spirit as he admitted his attraction to my sister seemed more appealing and opportune, deepening my sense of betrayal. Trying to express my feelings amidst this chaos was nearly impossible as I grappled with the shock and hurt of the moment. I found myself utterly speechless as Alex tried to rationalize his behavior, almost pleading with me to grasp the seductive appeal of a woman possessing significant wealth. I felt a deep recoil at his words, the sting of rejection and humiliation sharp and sudden. In the background, my sister's laughter, unreasonably loud and triumphant, punctuated the chaos she had wrought. As the phone was handed back to her, she delivered a statement with such finality it felt like a physical blow, announcing the end of our sisterly bond. Her words hung heavy in the air, the concept of sisterhood now just shattered fragments of a once treasured relationship. Over the next 6 years, solitude and heartache became my close companions. Now, as I sat with a cat peacefully dozing on my lap, the memories of that devastating phone call remained vividly etched in my mind. The room was filled with the soft hum of the cat purring in its sleep, a comforting sound on my day off. Yet there was a lingering sense of guilt about some unfinished work I had brought home. As I mulled over my to-do list, the tranquility was broken by the ring of my phone, an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. Assuming it might be work-related, I answered without suspicion. "Hello," I greeted, only to hear a voice that was unmistakably familiar. "Karen, long time no see," said my sister, Helen, her unique speech patterns instantly recognizable despite the years. A smirk formed on my face as I acknowledged her, and as our conversation unfolded, Helen began prying into my personal life, inquiring about a new hotel near my home. I chose to keep the details to myself, deflecting her questions. The conversation took a surprising turn when Helen confessed her financial woes, revealing that she had blown through her entire inheritance in just 4 years. Even Alex, who had remained by her side, was now mired in debt. As I listened to Helen's request for a loan, my initial annoyance faded into a profound sense of detachment. I responded with calm, bringing up the consequences of her actions in the past, which prompted a flood of memories from 6 years ago, the day Alex ended our relationship. Devastated, I found comfort in an old painting I had given to my grandfather as a child. During a moment of introspection, I discovered a hidden note behind the painting, a letter addressed to me from my grandfather written shortly before his death. In the letter, my grandfather explained the reasons behind the seemingly uneven distribution of his estate, emphasizing his deep appreciation for my constant care and presence in his final years. This revelation brought clarity to any lingering questions about favoritism and provided much-needed closure. It reassured me about my grandfather's intentions, confirming that the distribution was a testament to the enduring bonds within our family and highlighting the true significance behind his decisions. As I digested the contents of the letter, a shiver ran down my spine at the realization that I could have easily missed this crucial message. Despite the clarity it brought, I still found myself deeply hurt by Helen's cruel words from that time. Although I had a strong connection with my grandfather, a tinge of jealousy lingered as I continued to read. Helen, it seemed, was not satisfied with a simple share of the inheritance. Her greed was pervasive, extending even to her role as a granddaughter. The letter starkly illuminated her actions, how she had not only squandered her inheritance, but also manipulated situations to her benefit, including taking Alex away from me. This acknowledgement from my grandfather, though painful, was a necessary insight into the dynamics that had long influenced our family's interactions. Feeling a duty to my grandfather's intentions, I had arranged to meet with Alex to discuss the inheritance. My grandfather's will had been crafted thoughtfully, seemingly granting Helen the larger share at first glance. However, a hidden detail in his letter revealed more. The land I received was expected to grow significantly in value due to urban development nearby. As I read through the letter, my eyes widened with surprise. Grandpa had suggested I could either live on the land if I felt emotionally attached to it, or sell it for a substantial profit when its value increased. His main wish was for my happiness. When I shared this revelation with Helen, she scoffed disdainfully and dismissively called me an old hag. Despite her reaction, I decided to heed our grandfather's advice. I lived in the house for a while, and once I was married and the land's value had risen sufficiently, I sold it. When Helen later approached me for a loan, I firmly told her I wouldn't lend her any money. In her frustration, she audaciously offered to return Alex to me as a bargaining chip. That was the last straw. I unleashed years of pent-up frustration, telling Helen how much her ingratitude repulsed me. I disowned her as my sister, making it clear I was already happily married and had no desire to see Alex again. I ended the conversation, blocked her calls, and apologized to my cat for the emotional upheaval. Unwilling to let go, Helen and Alex mistakenly stormed into what they thought was still my house, causing havoc. The police were called as they destroyed several items. It was then revealed during their questioning that they had previously committed marriage fraud to extract money. Both were arrested and faced charges that could lead to prison time. This final incident underscored the toxic dynamics that had escalated over the years, affirming my decision to cut ties and move on from the destructive relationship with my sister. Having successfully proven my lack of involvement after selling the land and severing ties with Helen, my husband came to pick me up from the police station. As we navigated the bustling corridors, we saw Helen and Alex, both looking distraught and barely recognizable, being escorted to another part of the facility. A wave of melancholy washed over me, seeing how far things had deteriorated, but the warmth of my husband's presence offered a comforting contrast. As we stepped outside into the crisp air, my husband's concerned gaze met mine. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice laden with worry. I responded with a reassuring smile and placed his hand on my belly, feeling the gentle kick of our unborn child. "I have you and our baby right here," I said, the words not just a reassurance to him, but a reminder to myself of the new priorities in my life. The ride home was quiet but filled with an unspoken understanding and comfort. We didn't need to discuss what had just transpired. We were both just relieved to be moving past the chaos. As we drove, I looked out the window, watching the scenery blur past, and reflected on the tumultuous events that had unfolded over the years. It dawned on me how life had thrown such unexpected challenges my way, and yet here I was, with a partner who stood by me and a new life blossoming inside me. The stark contrast between my current state of peace and the turmoil of the past highlighted a profound truth about the human experience. Adversity is not just about the hardships themselves, but what we choose to carry forward from them. The ordeal with Helen and Alex was painful and fraught with betrayal, yet it also served as a pivotal point for me to reassess what truly mattered. It wasn't the monetary value of the inheritance that held weight. It was the lessons of love, resilience, and forgiveness that I would take away from the experience. As we arrived home, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the stability and love that awaited me. Stepping through the door, my husband and I were greeted by the quiet comfort of our living space, a stark contrast to the stark and sterile environment of the police station. It was in this sanctuary that we would prepare for the arrival of our child, in a home filled with love and devoid of the shadows of the past. Over the next few months, as my belly grew and the baby's kicks became stronger, I often found myself thinking about the kind of world I wanted our child to inherit. It was a world where love and integrity stood at the forefront, where family was about support and understanding, not conflict and greed. I realized that teaching our child about these values started with how I lived my own life. The decision to let go of bitterness and focus on building a nurturing environment was not just for my own peace, but was a foundational step in crafting the legacy I would leave for the next generation. As I moved forward, every step felt lighter, each day brighter. With my husband by my side in the future ahead, I looked forward to the days when we could teach our child about the true essence of wealth. It wasn't measured in dollars and property, but in the moments of laughter shared, the hugs exchanged, and the unconditional love that bound us together. My name is Julie. I currently work with my husband, Scott, at his family's small business. This business is managed by my father-in-law, Paul. It's a cozy place with about 5 employees. Paul doesn't get involved much in the daily work. Instead, Scott, who will soon take over as president, works hard. He looks for new clients and projects, showing his dedication to growing the business. When we have a big project, all the employees come together enthusiastically, creating a vibrant atmosphere. I have been working here for 12 years since I got married. Hey Julie, how long do you plan on clinging to our family business? My mother-in-law, Olivia, asked this as I came home early to make dinner, while Scott was still at the office. Olivia had retired from the business when Scott and I got married and seemed happy about her retirement. But now, with more free time, she often criticized me. What do you mean by clinging? I asked, trying to stay calm. Olivia sharply replied, exactly what it sounds like. You must have married Scott because you couldn't find a job anywhere else, and now you're just taking advantage of our company. I sighed to myself. These kinds of comments from her were becoming more common. When I married, I left my previous job and joined Scott's family business by choice, not because I was fired. For some reason, Olivia thought I was completely unskilled at my job. I said before that it's not that I couldn't work somewhere else. I chose to join Scott's company, I told her. But she answered dismissively, I can see right through your real intentions. She thought she knew everything about me and walked back to the living room. However, the problems with my mother-in-law weren't just her words. She had quit her job promising to look after the house, but she never helped out. My father-in-law often asked her to do some chores since she was home all day, but she stubbornly refused, saying, I've worked all my life, now it's the daughter-in-law's turn to do the housework. As a result, I usually ended up making dinner. Olivia seemed to make and eat her own lunch as she liked, but she never cleaned up afterward. Each day, as I returned from my errands, the sight of piled-up plates and utensils greeted me, stirring a mix of frustration and resignation within me. Gathering my courage, I decided to address this domestic issue one sunny afternoon. Olivia, I began hesitantly, trying to sound as diplomatic as possible. I've noticed the dishes often get left in the sink. It would be really helpful if you could tidy up after your meals. It's just a small request, but it would mean a lot to me. To my dismay, Olivia's response was far from understanding. Her eyes flashed with anger as she snapped, Are you trying to give me orders in my own house? You're just a daughter-in-law. How dare you dictate what I should do? Her sharp and unyielding words reminded me of the delicate balance in our family dynamics. I wish Helen were here instead of you, Olivia continued, her voice laced with a mix of longing and bitterness. Helen, Scott's younger sister and my sister-in-law, was a spirited and ambitious woman. Our encounters had been limited to brief formal meetings, and she was notably absent from our wedding, having canceled at the last minute. I later learned from Scott that she had overindulged with friends the night before and was nursing a hangover, unable to attend. Despite this, Helen pursued her dreams fiercely, relocating to Jersey after her college graduation to dive into the bustling world of fashion design. In an attempt to change the subject, I mentioned Helen's hard work and dedication. Helen's really making a name for herself in Jersey, working hard in her field, I said, hoping to ease the tension. However, Olivia's views on Jersey were negative. Jersey, that cold, impersonal city. It's no place for someone as warm-hearted as Helen. And you're from Jersey too, aren't you? Now it all makes sense. You're always so distant towards me. Caught in this tiring conversation, I realized that if I didn't start preparing dinner soon, we'd be eating much later than usual. While dealing with my own frustrations, I managed to stay calm. Mom, let's continue this conversation later. I need to focus on getting dinner ready, or we'll be eating quite late tonight. With some reluctance, Olivia finally went back to the living room, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the noise of the cooking utensils. Paul and Scott were both aware of Olivia's mistreatment towards me as a daughter-in-law and tried to intervene whenever they saw it happening. However, their efforts seemed to have little effect. Each time they confronted the situation, their faces showed concern and frustration, showing their desire to create harmony in our family. Ironically, whenever Paul and Scott scolded Olivia for her behavior, she took out her anger on me, becoming even more hostile and sharp with her words. Her face, usually kind and gentle, became twisted with disdain, her tone cutting deeper than before. Although I had never been physically hurt, the emotional impact of Olivia's words was significant. Paul and Scott's support had been my comfort, helping me somewhat ignore Olivia's harsh words until then. One morning, just after I had finished cleaning up from breakfast and was preparing to leave for work, something unimaginable happened. In the midst of the morning rush, as I was hurrying, Olivia suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my, what a mess!" And without warning, she poured a bucket of water over my handbag. I was stunned, a mix of shock and anger making me speechless. "What are you doing, Olivia?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling with disbelief. Olivia's response was dismissive, her tone like that of a mischievous child. "Oh, was that your stuff?" "I thought it was just a big piece of trash," she said dismissively, which made me even angrier. "Even if you thought it was trash, who pours water on it? What kind of thinking is that? Now the carpet is all wet. Why would you do something like this?" I was really upset as I quickly took the wet things out of my bag, including important work documents, and laid them on the table. Olivia looked calm and didn't seem sorry or worried about how upset I was. "Because you don't need to go to work anymore," she said coolly. I was shocked. In our living room, filled with morning light, I sat across from Olivia. Her face was colder and more determined than usual. It was as if she had made a decision that would change everything. "Excuse me," I said, confused and surprised. "You've been in this house for 12 years, but now I can finally get rid of you," she declared. Her words hurt me deeply, and her voice had a level of anger and determination I had never heard before. My mind spun and my heart ached. "Getting rid of me?" I asked, unable to believe what I was hearing. Her words made me feel like an outsider in this family. "Actually, my daughter is joining the company, so we need you to leave. Today's your last day. All you have to do is bow your head to your father-in-law and Scott, apologizing for all the trouble you've caused," she said with a mocking laugh. She was using my job to push me out. I had spent years at that job, earning respect and making memories. I was shocked and hurt. My devotion to this family seemed to mean nothing to her. It horrified me not just that she acted this way, but that after 12 years of hard work, she could ask me to leave so her daughter could take my place. It felt like my years of effort were being disregarded. "Really? Are you sure about this? Wasn't Helen working in a clothing store in Jersey?" I asked, reflecting my confusion and worry. My job was more than just a paycheck. It was my way of fulfilling myself. Meanwhile, Helen, my sister-in-law, seemed to have grown tired of city life and decided to come back to the family. She said she was tired of the unfriendly people in Jersey, so I told her if she came back home, I'd have a job ready for her. She agreed to return immediately. Now that she's coming back, I want you out of this house, she told me. I couldn't believe her words. She was ready to turn my life upside down with just one decision, completely ignoring my role in the family and not even listening to me. She handed me an envelope, saying, "I've written your resignation letter," and just like that, she kicked me out. My heart broke. Everything I had built over the years seemed worthless, treated like just a piece of paper. Her actions deeply hurt our family bond. I walked to the company, just a quick 5-minute walk from my house. As I walked under the cool morning sky, each step was heavy with the weight of what was happening. When I told my father-in-law, Paul, and my husband, Scott, about what my mother-in-law had said, they were shocked but stayed calm. They suggested that maybe it was time for me to resign to show her the reality of the situation. This idea upset me deeply. I had worked hard in our family business for years and barely knew what a long vacation was like, aside from short breaks during Thanksgiving and the holiday season. Encouraged by Scott and Paul's kind words, "Why don't you spread your wings for a change?" I decided to go on a little trip. As I packed, I thought a lot about my life, my choices, and what was ahead. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law Helen, who was supposed to replace me at the company, shockingly didn't show up until 3:00 p.m. Her lack of responsibility disappointed Scott and Paul, who had been managing without me. Helen seemed not interested in learning the work despite their efforts to teach her. Hearing this made me worry about the future of our company, even as I looked forward to my trip. Leaving without seeing my mother-in-law, I quickly started my journey. During the trip, as I enjoyed the view from the train, I reflected on my life past, present, and future, and savored local seafood delicacies. I thought deeply about myself, my family, and our business. But on the 5 days of my trip, the peace was broken when Helen called me crying. "What's going on?" I asked. "Mom said it was an easy job, just sitting in a chair, but Scott and Dad are acting like I can't do anything right," she said. Her words, likely influenced by my mother-in-law, surprised me even as I was enjoying my break. I decided it was time to address the situation. "So, Helen, how good are you with computers?" I asked her. Hesitantly, she replied, "Well, I usually watch videos online, and I play games too." This question was to see if Helen could adjust to a new job. Having worked in a clothing store in Jersey for a while, her computer skills seemed basic. "Do you know how to use Word or Excel?" I asked. Helen looked confused, showing she wasn't familiar with these tools in a professional setting. Even in clothing stores, tasks like managing sales data in Excel or recording customer info in Word are common. Have you ever worked with image editing, video editing, or audio editing software? Do you have any experience with such tools? I asked. Helen, clearly puzzled, replied, "What's all that?" This question aimed to dig deeper into her technical skills to better understand her capabilities. Considering her background in the apparel industry, it's unlikely she never used a computer. Tasks like tracking sales, managing inventory, and inputting customer data would have required her to use Excel. When asked if she can handle calculations for sales or fill in documents, she confidently said, "I can do that." However, when I asked if she could also calculate tax, her confidence faded, and she answered uncertainly, This question tested her math skills and her ability to use them in a business context. While Helen might have other skills, it was clear she was insecure about the necessary skills for the job. Her discomfort seemed mainly due to her struggle with calculations, which could explain why she faced criticism from Paul and Scott. First and foremost, I needed to show my mother-in-law and those who tried to push me out that they were mistaken. "Since you're taking over my job," I began. I told Helen that she needed to handle the accounting tasks well and remember to be professional in her emails, because a casual tone that might be fine with friends doesn't work for business. She would also be in charge of scheduling the staff shifts. Even though our team is small, we carefully consider everyone's time off requests, so she shouldn't just think about what's convenient for her. As I listed these expectations, I could hear her sobbing on the other end of the phone. But I was told I wouldn't have to do anything. Why are there so many tasks? I didn't come back home for this, she said, and then abruptly ended the call. Over the next 4 days, I decided to enjoy sightseeing in Jersey, the place Helen had left. My time there showed me that not everyone in Jersey is unfriendly actually. Finding someone as cold-hearted as my mother-in-law and Helen seemed rare. A week after I left my job, I returned to my in-laws' house. When I arrived, Olivia, looking very upset, confronted me angrily. How dare you make my daughter cry? You won't get away with this, she yelled, her eyes full of anger and misunderstanding. She tried to grab me, but Scott and Paul quickly stepped in to calm her down, though her anger didn't seem to lessen. Scott sighed deeply before saying, Helen is upset because she was scolded for trying to boss her employees around despite not being able to do the job right. It's not Julie's fault. Besides, Julie hasn't been here for a week, so she couldn't have upset Helen. Mom, you really need to stop these groundless accusations. But Olivia kept blaming me. It's because of her. This woman is the reason for Helen's trouble, she claimed, her voice emotional and filled with baseless suspicions. Where is Helen, by the way? I asked, looking around the living room, but Helen was nowhere to be seen. Her absence added more confusion to an already puzzling situation. While it didn't matter to me that Olivia was upset about Helen, I knew Helen didn't have many options since she had ended her lease at her apartment in Jersey. I thought Helen would be at her parents' house, but she wasn't there, which made me wonder. Helen's locked herself in her room. She's been crying and saying she doesn't want to go to work anymore, Scott explained. It seemed like Helen had avoided learning the job properly. It was understandable, though, because she didn't have the skills needed to replace me. You've been turning Scott and Paul against me, haven't you? Otherwise, they wouldn't say the company ran better with you than with Helen, who can't do the job. Olivia accused me sharply. Her words were filled with long-standing misunderstandings and prejudices, leaving me completely baffled. She seemed to have always seen me as an opponent, her words reflecting years of wrong ideas. Scott let out a heavy sigh, his face showing his tiredness and frustration with the complicated emotions in our family. He had tried many times to clear up the misunderstandings among family members, but it didn't seem to work very well. Mom, I know it might sound odd coming from me, but Julie is truly exceptional at her work. She's certified in bookkeeping and her secretarial skills are top-notch. Moreover, she's studied Spanish and even has experience studying abroad. When it comes to dealing with multiple languages at our company, Julie handles everything, Scott said with a sense of pride. His mother, Olivia, looked very surprised. She had assumed that I quit my job as soon as I joined the family, so she had no idea about my contributions and achievements at work. What? That sounds like something straight out of a TV drama, I thought, recalling my college days. I was so focused on getting various certifications that I immersed myself in my studies, so much that I barely had time for clubs or a romantic relationship. It was during this busy time that I met Scott, who came to my company for business. As I found myself sharing the story of how Scott and I first met, I realized that this wasn't what Olivia wanted to hear. So I quickly got back to the main point. In short, I was responsible for a lot of tasks at the company, from handling accounting to scheduling, working with other companies, and managing employee shifts. Thanks to that, I could reach out to other businesses for deals, making the work environment much more comfortable than when Olivia was around. Scott added this, leaving Olivia speechless in amazement. Just then, Paul, Scott's father, made a comment that surprised me. We're going to shut down the company soon, actually. Helen made a big mistake. Even though she was supposed to prepare some documents, she decided to handle phone calls because it seemed more fun. While Scott and I were away, she ended up being rude to the person in charge from another company. Of course, I got a call to confirm this. Hearing this, I was so shocked that I instinctively covered my mouth with my hand. I can't believe Helen would do something like that, I murmured, filled with disbelief. The thought that Helen's actions might lead to the downfall of our company went through my mind, filling me with dread. However, as I was lost in these anxious thoughts, the story took an unexpected turn. When I explained the situation, they suggested it might be time to end the family business. We had mentioned this to you before, right? About being absorbed by another company, they said. Then, the president of company stepped forward, saying he was interested if Julie and I were involved. This was an unexpected but long-hoped-for development. Running a family business has its limits, and it's uncertain whether we could consistently attract stable customers. That's why Scott had always worked hard in sales, trying to secure new clients. Being absorbed by a larger company could mean having a steady base of customers. The future, once uncertain, suddenly seemed to have a bit of hope. However, this news only brought relief to me, Scott, and his father. Scott's mother suddenly opposed the idea, saying, "That's not acceptable. Scott must become the president. This company is ours, isn't it?" I was surprised by this sudden change. It seemed that more than a stable future, Olivia was concerned about maintaining the prestige of being part of a company president's family. "And you're telling me he's not going to be the president anymore? Absolutely not acceptable," Olivia exclaimed passionately. This commotion caught the interest of Helen, who was upstairs in her room, leading her to come down to the living room to see what was happening. In response to the chaos started by Olivia, Paul spoke up calmly but firmly, "I am divorcing you, so either way, you will no longer be part of this executive family. Not only have you not changed your attitude towards my son's wife, but you also neglect household chores. To top it off, you spend your days out with young men instead of being home. I have no intention of supporting such a wife any longer." This was news to both me and Scott. We were so shocked that we could only stare at Paul with wide eyes. It seemed he had planned to discuss divorce from the beginning, as he took out divorce papers and a photo of Olivia with a young man from the living room shelf, placing them on the table. "If you sign the divorce papers now and leave with your belongings, I won't ask for alimony. I know getting any money from you would be pointless anyway," Paul said. "So unfair. How can you say that? Haven't I been devoted to this house all these years?" Olivia protested. "Devoted to this house? Have you done any real housework in the last 12 years? Does spending someone else's money on young men count as devotion to the house?" Paul countered. It was the first time we saw him this angry. Seeing this, Helen, who had come down to the living room, was visibly shaking from shock. "Helen, you're part of this too. You came back home because you couldn't make it in Jersey, and now you can't find a job, but still act superior. In the end, you stopped working entirely. Who did you inherit this escapism from? It's time for you to leave this house too," he continued. Next, we saw Helen's shock and resistance. She believed she was an important member of the family, but the reality was different. "Wait a minute, Dad. Mom might be a lost cause, but I'm your precious daughter, right?" she said. The family conflict deepened as Helen tried to assert her place, revealing her betrayal towards her mother. "Helen, are you betraying me now?" Olivia exclaimed, feeling betrayed by her daughter at the last moment. However, as the two started to argue loudly, Paul sternly silenced them with a shout. "If I just kick you out, it'll cause trouble for everyone, so I've asked an acquaintance to take you in. They'll be here soon to pick you up. Get your minimum belongings ready." Left with no choice, Olivia and Helen began packing their belongings. Then, an acquaintance of Paul arrived to take Olivia and Helen away. The person who came to pick them up was running a factory with dormitories, and it seemed they would be working there. Meanwhile, Scott, Paul, and I talked to the employees about the company being absorbed and prepared for the busy days ahead for our future. Finally, I found out I was pregnant. When I told the president of Company A, he was delighted and promised to send someone to replace me, which was a huge relief. Currently, Scott and Paul are working even harder for the sake of our upcoming child.
Lisa, my love, the bread we have isn't really good. Could you possibly fix it? What's wrong with it? You might wonder. Perhaps a new oven could solve our problem. I've seen some fantastic ones for sale recently. Sure, I'll discuss it with Mrs. Emily. My name is Lisa Ray, and I'm 35 years old. I trade Forex from home as my full-time job. I met my husband, Cian, who is 2 years older than me, when we both worked at a small mail order company. He worked with pet food, and I was in customer service for cosmetics. It was a demanding job, often keeping us at work late, but we looked forward to unwinding with coworkers over drinks once a week. Despite the grind and the decent paycheck, our only real joy came from these small gatherings. It was during these times Cian and I began dating, and we got married 3 years later. After getting married, I took a break from work and soon discovered Forex trading. I dove into learning everything I could, buying books and practicing online. It wasn't easy, but I dedicated myself to it, eventually developing a successful trading strategy. However, my in-laws, who now live with us, don't quite understand what I do. When my father-in-law retired and considering their limited pension, my husband suggested they move in with us into our 3-bedroom condo, which I now pay for thanks to my Forex trading income. We've assured them they're welcome and not to worry about expenses. I don't bother with household chores. We have a housekeeping service for that. Mrs. Emily takes care of everything, including cooking, which is a huge help for us. I dedicate my days to mastering Forex trading and sharing my insights on blogs rather than tackling household chores. However, my in-laws were initially understanding when they moved in. Their attitude shifted after a couple of months. They started to question why I, being always at home, didn't engage in any housework, labeling my job as mere gambling and a trivial pursuit in front of a computer. These complaints were never directly addressed to me, but I sensed their discontent through the indirect remarks they made to my husband. Since my husband no longer needs to worry about rent or living costs, thanks to my trading income, he has indulged in his love for fashion, donning custom suits and brand-name accessories. His newfound freedom to spend on luxuries has made him quite happy. He used to defend me against any grievances from my in-laws, but that has recently changed. He started critiquing me for always being on my computer, not wearing makeup, and sticking to sweatpants around the house, suggesting I should dress up more appealingly at home. This took me by surprise. Why should I dress up and wear makeup just to stay home? It led to a disagreement between us, with him expressing a desire for me to look more cute for him, a notion I found unnecessary and odd. Following this discussion, I noticed my husband began to echo my in-laws' complaints about me. One evening, I accidentally overheard a conversation among them criticizing my supposed arrogance and indifference to household chores. They speculated that I looked down on them for their previous living situation and believed I considered myself superior because of my income from Forex trading, which they dismissed as simple luck that anyone could replicate. They even went as far as to mock my appearance, questioning my self-worth. This entire situation has highlighted a rift in understanding and appreciation for what I do and the financial contributions I make to our household, casting a shadow over the dynamics within our family. I've been working from home for a while now, cherishing the mornings when my husband and I could enjoy breakfast together before he headed off to his job at the company where we both used to work. Unfortunately, he starts his day quite early, which means he often comes back late. Our breakfasts were a precious time for us. Yet recently, he's begun skipping them, claiming he'd rather eat on the go or not at all. This change didn't go unnoticed by my mother-in-law, who criticized my husband's new habit with a sneer, suggesting that he was growing tired of having a wife who didn't perform her duties. I found this remark outdated, especially since Mrs. Emily handles all our household chores efficiently, ensuring everything is in perfect order. My rebuttal that the concept of wife duties is outdated sparked a disagreement, particularly with my mother-in-law, who holds traditional views very dear. She couldn't understand my perspective, emphasizing the importance of fulfilling these roles regardless of our arrangements for housework. The fact that I was financing it didn't seem to matter to her. She believed that bringing up financial contributions was inappropriate. I noticed my in-laws have been living quite comfortably without the worry of expenses, thanks to my financial support. My mother-in-law, for instance, often socializes with neighbors, flaunting expensive designer bags, while my father-in-law dedicates a significant portion of his pension to his golfing passion, even purchasing new golf clubs. This spending puzzled me, given that I was covering all household costs, including rent. However, with nowhere else for my in-laws to go, I felt compelled to tolerate the situation. Around a month after my husband began missing our breakfasts, he started traveling more for work, involved in a project to import leads from Thailand. These trips became increasingly frequent, often extending over weekends. As he ventured abroad, I was left to ponder the shifting dynamics of our household and the challenges of balancing personal ambitions with family expectations. I had plans to grab lunch with my friend Shirley at an upscale Italian restaurant we both enjoyed. It was a place I had visited before with Cian, my husband. However, during our meal, as we were enjoying some wine, Shirley pointed out Cian exiting the restaurant with a woman. This was shocking because he was supposed to be on a business trip to Thailand. The woman with him was notably younger, and the sight reignited Cian's earlier remarks about wanting me to look cute for him. The realization that Cian might be unfaithful led me to hire a private investigator to look into his actions. Meanwhile, at home, I noticed an increase in packages arriving from my mother-in-law. When I asked her about it, she defensively asked if she needed my permission to shop. It turned out she had developed a penchant for online shopping, particularly for designer bags and accessories. However, her excitement seemed misguided, as many online deals are too good to be true, often resulting in fake products. One day, she came to me with a concern about her latest haul 5 bags she bought at a suspiciously low price, fearing they might be counterfeit. Indeed, upon inspection, the bags were clearly imitations. I advised her to attempt a return, but contact with the seller proved impossible. The phone number was disconnected, and emails went unanswered. She had spent $3,000 through a bank transfer on a site that seemed legitimate, but offered designer items at unrealistically low prices, with no option for cancellations or refunds through her bank. I warned her about the risks of buying designer goods online, especially when the deals seemed too good to be true. However, my advice seemed to fall on deaf ears as she dismissed my concerns, highlighting a gap in understanding the nuances of online shopping and the importance of caution. After a peaceful dinner on Sunday, my work on Forex trading was abruptly interrupted by my father-in-law. He had recently been golfing with old friends who shared some skepticism about Forex trading, painting it as a scam filled with deceitful promises of easy money. His confrontation was based on misinformation, assuming that since I was involved in Forex, I might be engaging in similar deceptive practices. Despite my explanations, he doubted my integrity, thinking my success was too good to be true, especially since he saw his own efforts in business as more legitimate hard work. I tried to assure him that my trading activities were legitimate and that I wasn't duping anyone, but my explanations fell on deaf ears. He even questioned if we could manage our expenses without my Forex income, to which he confidently claimed he could cover at least the rent. This discussion highlighted a lack of understanding and appreciation for the financial stability my trading provided us. The next day brought more distress as the results from the private detective confirmed my husband Cian's affair with a younger coworker, a woman I hadn't met since she joined the company after I left. Amidst processing this betrayal, my situation at home reached a boiling point. That evening, after the housekeeping service had left, my mother-in-law declared a shocking ultimatum. She, along with Cian and my father-in-law, expressed their collective disdain for me, questioning the morality of my income and criticizing my personality. They demanded I leave, preferring to live without the financial support I provided, which they now viewed as tainted. This confrontation, before Cian even came home from work, signaled a clear end to our family dynamic, pushing me towards an inevitable decision about our marriage and my future in the household. Feeling an unexpected sense of relief upon hearing their demands, I realized that my husband's absence signified the end of any emotional connection between us. It dawned on me that I had no obligation to care for these people who failed to appreciate my contributions. That very day, I packed my belongings and sought refuge in a hotel, marking the start of my independence. The discovery of my husband's affair facilitated a swift divorce process, during which I secured alimony, a testament to my newfound assertiveness. I found solace in a one-bedroom apartment, an ideal sanctuary for a fresh start, and shifted the lease of our shared apartment to my ex-husband, effectively severing our household ties. Months later, my ex-husband reached out, seeking a meeting at my new place, a request that filled me with apprehension. His arrival, accompanied by my former in-laws, confirmed my suspicions of their desperate circumstances. Amid tears, my ex-husband pleaded for reconciliation, revealing their dire financial straits due to an inability to afford their rent, a predicament that left them on the brink of eviction. The root of their woes traced back to my ex-husband's ill-fated venture into the LED import business. His investment in defective Thailand LED lights resulted in a catastrophic failure, compounded by communication issues and contractual ambiguities that prevented any recourse. His subsequent attempt to salvage his finances through forex trading, without the necessary knowledge or preparation, ended in disaster, draining his remaining savings. Meanwhile, my ex-father-in-law's venture into the stock market, driven by a similar hope for quick gains, also collapsed, leaving them financially destitute. Confronted with their pleas for assistance, I couldn't help but question the whereabouts of my ex-husband's younger companion, highlighting the irony of their situation. Their fall from grace underscored a harsh lesson in responsibility and the consequences of unwise financial decisions, leaving them in a predicament of their own making, far removed from the stability and support they once took for granted in our shared life. He admitted to losing touch with his younger girlfriend, rationalizing that there was no allure for her to remain with someone who had lost his job. In a desperate bid for redemption, he appealed to me, proclaiming I was the one he truly needed and suggesting we remarry. His family echoed his sentiments, apologizing for their past misconceptions and the unjust accusations they had levied against me, particularly concerning my forex trading activities. They expressed regret, hoping for forgiveness and a second chance to restore our family unit. However, I firmly rejected their pleas. Despite their assurances of change, including promises from my ex-husband to remain faithful, my resolve was unwavering. I made it clear that any further persistence on their part would compel me to involve the police. They left, heavy-hearted and without hope. Their subsequent attempts to contact me, begging for reconciliation, were consistently denied. The fate of my ex-husband and his parents no longer concerns me. I've chosen to sever ties completely. Yet, in the solitude of my continued success as a trader, I felt the stirrings of loneliness. Seeking companionship, I confided in my friend Shirley, who has kindly offered to introduce me to someone new. We've arranged to meet this person tomorrow, and I find myself eager for this fresh beginning, hopeful for what the future may bring. Despite what you might think, I've already ended the lease for our apartment. Confused? Let me explain. My mom suggested we should cancel our rental agreement, so together, we went ahead and did that while you were away on your work trip. This is unbelievable. I can't continue living with such irrational people. My mother-in-law, Linda, thought that by ending our apartment lease, I'd have no choice but to move in with them. But I'm determined not to give in to this pressure. I simply refuse. What are you even saying? You're his wife. It's expected of you, someone insisted. But my response was clear. Then I'll seek a divorce. My name is Mary, and I'm a 34-year-old who works in an office. My husband, Larry, and I tied the knot a year ago. We both work for companies that collaborate frequently, which is how we met. Working together led to us hanging out privately, eventually dating, and finally getting married a year later. Life with Larry was joyful. He's upbeat and humorous, and we shared many laughs living together. I truly believed I had married an amazing person and was overjoyed with our life together. However, I was soon to discover an unexpected side of Larry. 5 months into our marriage, we spent our first New Year's Eve at my in-laws' house. Before this, my interactions with Larry's parents had been minimal and brief. But that New Year's visit revealed their true colors. The gathering included my parents-in-law and my sisters-in-law, Nancy, who is single, and Emily, who is married with a young son, Justin. Emily's husband had gone to visit his own parents, leaving Emily and Justin with us. Until that point, I had a good impression of my in-laws, finding them as cheerful and approachable as Larry. I hoped for a pleasant and normal conversation during the visit. Unfortunately, things didn't go as expected. "Mary, could you lend me a hand?" my mother-in-law Linda asked, pulling me into the kitchen. As I followed, her friendly smile vanished, replaced by a cold look. "You're quite slow. Normally, you should have offered to help without needing to be asked," she scolded. Feeling a rush of apology, I was worried I had somehow upset her. Eager to mend the situation, I did my best to contribute and hopefully win back Linda's approval. Yet, Linda's harsh criticisms didn't stop. She accused me of acting entitled because of Larry's kindness and questioned why I was still working instead of focusing solely on family life. "Larry only agreed because you insisted, didn't he? You're not acting like a good wife at all," she scolded. She criticized me for not being more involved when visiting their house, claiming I ignored household duties and only added to Larry's burdens. Feeling hurt by Linda's relentless barbs, my spirits lifted slightly when Nancy, one of my sisters-in-law, entered the kitchen. We had shared pleasant chats before, so I hoped for her support. However, to my dismay, Nancy joined in the criticism, disparaging my cooking skills in front of everyone. This was completely unexpected, and I was stunned by her harsh words. It seemed both Linda and Nancy had chosen this moment to be particularly cruel, a side of them I hadn't seen before. The New Year's celebration at my in-laws, which I had hoped would be enjoyable, turned into a deeply uncomfortable experience. Despite the ongoing feast, I couldn't find joy in any of it. Linda and Nancy kept the conversation among themselves, discussing topics only relevant to their family, leaving me feeling excluded. Larry, oblivious to my discomfort, didn't intervene. Linda's demeanor only worsened when she noticed my disinterest, commanding me to serve drinks as if I were a servant, with no one questioning her behavior. As the evening finally ended, Larry, having had too much to drink, announced his intention to stay over. Unwilling to endure any more, I managed to get him into the car and drove us home, leaving the unpleasantness behind. The next day, I reflected on the entire ordeal, pondering the unexpected turn of events and the cold treatment I received from those I had hoped to consider family. I decided to have a conversation with Larry about the discomforting experience I had at his family's house. "Larry, Linda, and Nancy were really mean to me," I started. Larry seemed surprised and dismissive. That's hard to believe. "We were all enjoying ourselves. You're probably the only one who feels that way." I tried to explain how Linda and Nancy had said some pretty hurtful things to me in the kitchen, but Larry doubted such an event, questioning whether I was making it up. When I pressed further, he excused himself, citing a hangover and a headache, asking to delay the discussion, which he never revisited. Later, Larry mentioned we were expected at his sister's house soon, for Justin's birthday. Without considering my feelings about our last visit, he insisted I attend and even pick out Justin's birthday gift, despite my busy schedule. After much thought and despite my reservations, I selected a gift I hoped Justin would enjoy. At Justin's birthday party, my effort seemed to pay off when Justin expressed genuine joy for the present I chose. Emily, assuming Larry was behind the thoughtful gift, thanked him. I waited for Larry to correct her, but instead, he took the credit, claiming extensive research went into selecting Justin's present, leaving me astonished and unacknowledged. I was thrilled to see Justin's happiness with the gift I had carefully chosen for him. Yet my satisfaction turned to disbelief when Larry claimed the credit for the thoughtful present. Before I could process this, Linda's voice snapped me back to reality, urging me to hurry up with the cake. Confused? I asked. "What cake?" as I genuinely had no clue what she was referring to. Linda then shocked me by accusing me of forgetting the birthday cake she allegedly told me to prepare. "I didn't hear anything about that," I protested, but my confusion only seemed to irritate her further. "What kind of partner are you?" Didn't you prepare the cake? She pressed, making it clear that she believed I had been informed. Admitting I had no knowledge of the cake only drew disappointed glances from everyone. Linda then labeled me as negligent, causing distress not just for me but for Justin, who burst into tears, upset over the absence of a birthday cake. Linda's consolation to Justin, blaming the oversight on me, only added to my dismay. "How could you be so thoughtless?" she scolded, as if the mistake was mine. Looking to Larry for support, I hoped he'd clarify the misunderstanding, knowing well that Linda had never asked me about the cake. To my astonishment, Larry sided with Linda, accusing me of being a poor wife and implying I had intentionally upset his family. Just when the situation couldn't seem more dire, Nancy stepped in with a cake she had supposedly bought, just in case. Justin's mood instantly changed for the better at the sight of it, and Linda lavished praise on Nancy for her foresight. Nancy then took a dig at me, suggesting she had anticipated my negligence. It was in this moment I realized the trap that had been set for me. Linda and Nancy had orchestrated this scenario to paint me in a negative light, cleverly manipulating the situation to their advantage. The situation took an unexpected turn when everyone blamed me for forgetting the birthday cake, branding me as a negligent wife. There wasn't a single ally in sight. Even Larry joined in, accusing me of causing distress to Justin and declaring that I should leave as a form of punishment. "You shouldn't expect to stay for the meal or enjoy the cake after causing such trouble," he said, supported by Linda, Anne, and Nancy's insistence that I go home. With no other option, I left Anne's house, embarking on the long journey back to our place alone, reflecting on the irony of having selected Justin's present during my work time. That evening, Larry chose to stay at his parents' house instead of returning home. When he finally did come back the next day, he confronted me with allegations of harassing Linda and Nancy and deliberately forgetting the birthday cake, as if I had some vendetta against his family. "You're a terrible wife," he concluded, taking Linda's word over mine. I was stunned, not just by the accusations, but by his unwillingness to hear my side of the story. "Wait, you're taking their word over mine? And you're accusing me of neglect when you claimed credit for the gift I chose for Justin?" I challenged. Larry brushed it off, saying it didn't matter since the gift was from both of us, missing the point entirely. It dawned on me that Larry was more interested in maintaining his image with his family than in standing by me. His actions and words stripped away any affection I had for him, leaving me to contemplate a future without this marriage. If this pattern continued, I realized seeking a divorce might be the only way forward. As I mulled over the idea of leaving, an incident occurred that made up my mind for me. I had been away on a business trip for 2 days, unaware of any developments at home. Upon my return, I was met with the shocking sight of Larry's belongings neatly packed into cardboard boxes. Confused and alarmed, I reached out to Larry, who abruptly ended the call with a promise to return home soon. My frustration grew as I awaited his explanation, but to my surprise, Linda, Anne, and Nancy were with him when he arrived. "Larry, what's happening? Why are your things packed, and why are they here?" I demanded. Larry, with a smirk, announced, "We're moving out." "Moving? To where exactly?" I asked, bewildered. "To my mother's," he stated plainly, as if it was the most natural decision. Stunned, I protested. "Why are you deciding this without discussing it with me?" Linda interjected, accusing me of being childish and insisting I should simply agree with Larry's decisions. However, I stood my ground, emphasizing that as a married couple, Larry and I should make such significant decisions together. To my utter disbelief, Larry revealed that he and his mother had already terminated our apartment lease while I was away. This revelation left me speechless. I couldn't believe Larry would make such a drastic move without my consent, effectively leaving me with no say in the matter. Faced with the reality of moving in with Larry's family, a prospect I was adamantly against, I reached my breaking point. "You're suggesting that as his wife, I have no choice but to follow?" I clarified. "Exactly," Linda responded, convinced of her argument. In that moment, with clarity and conviction, I declared, "Then I'll divorce him." It was clear that staying in a relationship where my opinions were disregarded and where unilateral decisions were made without my input was not an option. The decision to leave was no longer just a consideration. It was a resolution. When I declared my intention to divorce, Larry was visibly shocked, unable to believe I was serious. "You can't be serious about wanting a divorce," he stammered, but I firmly stated my resolve, tired of the endless drama with his family. Larry's face paled at my words, and the room fell silent until Emily and Nancy, unable to contain themselves any longer, objected vehemently to my decision. "You can't divorce." "Who will look after our father if you leave?" Emily demanded, unwittingly revealing their true motives. It turned out their father had recently suffered a fall and required care, which they had hoped I would provide. Their reaction confirmed my suspicions that they had been plotting to burden me with the responsibility of caring for their father, a task none of them wished to undertake due to their self-centeredness. Their accusation of me being a useless wife only fueled my determination to leave. "So, it's clear now. You were hoping I'd be the one to care for him," I pointed out, exposing their selfish intentions. Their defensive and aggressive responses did nothing but reinforce my decision. As the argument escalated, Emily and Nancy, in their frustration, suggested I might as well divorce and leave, thinking their words would hurt me. Instead, I took them up on their offer, starting to pack my belongings right then and there. This sudden turn of events caused Larry and Linda to panic, realizing the gravity of the situation and the inconvenience my departure would cause them. They scrambled to retract the harsh words, with Larry pleading for me to reconsider the divorce, and Linda suggesting a compromise where I could help by becoming a full-time caretaker for their father, even trying to sweeten the deal by painting it as an opportunity for me to become a stay-at-home mom. Facing this last-ditch attempt to manipulate me into staying, I stood firm. "Unfortunately," I began, ready to make my final stand against their selfish demands, signaling the end of my patience and the start of a new chapter for me, free from their manipulations. Declining the role of a stay-at-home mom, I revealed to them something perhaps unknown. My salary exceeded Larry's due to my career progression at the company. I had been the main contributor to our apartment's rent, which wasn't cheap. This revelation highlighted the irony of their disdain for me, despite my financial contribution exceeding that of their own family member. With nothing more to add, I bid them farewell and left, leaving them in visible shock. I temporarily moved back to my parents' home and promptly sought legal counsel to initiate divorce proceedings against Larry. Larry, looking defeated, quietly consented to the divorce. In a twist of fate, Linda's attempt to delegate the care of their father to Emily and Nancy backfired as they outright refused the responsibility and chose to distance themselves instead. Moreover, Emily's personal life unraveled as she faced a substantial alimony demand following her spouse discovering her infidelity. Nancy, accused Justin to living under her mother's roof and relying on Linda for morning wake-up calls, struggled with independence. Her habitual tardiness, a result of her newfound freedom, ultimately cost her job. Larry, coerced back to the family home by Linda due to his status as the eldest son, found himself bearing the brunt of caring for their father. Overwhelmed by the dual responsibilities of work and caregiving, his exhaustion was palpable. Tensions between Larry and Linda escalated, leading to frequent arguments that disturbed the neighborhood peace to such an extent that police checks became a routine, isolating them further as the community distanced themselves from the family chaos. In contrast, I embraced a fresh start, securing a pleasant apartment close to my workplace. Enjoying my independence, I settled into a comfortable life, free from the turmoil that once clouded my days. The unfolding consequences for Larry and his family served as a stark reminder of the repercussions of their actions, affirming my decision to leave and rebuild my life on my own terms. I'm contemplating picking up a new hobby, especially since I'm not keen on diving into another relationship anytime soon. The whole experience with Larry and his family has been eye-opening. They had this tendency to dump all responsibilities on me, painting me as the villain in every scenario. Larry, despite earning less than me, had the audacity to be domineering, which was just pathetic. And then there were Anne and Linda, each wrapped up in their self-centered worlds, making it almost unbearable to be around them. However, Seeing them entangle themselves in their own mess was somewhat satisfying. I'm rooting for Mary to discover a new passion or hobby that brings her joy and fulfillment. After everything she's been through, she deserves all the happiness and peace the world has to offer. Here's to Mary's fresh start and to her finding contentment and excitement in life's next chapter. Thanks to everyone who stuck around till the end. Don't forget to subscribe for more updates. Catch you in the next video.
Lisa here, and I've got a tale that took everyone by surprise, especially my family. So what happened? Well, I ended up selling our house. The news hit like a bolt of lightning. My husband was beside me, equally floored. But if you think we were shocked, you should have seen my mother-in-law's reaction. It was as if the ground beneath her had vanished. Why on earth would you do something like that? She blurted out, unable to hide her disbelief. And weren't you supposed to come and pick me up? She was staring right at my brother-in-law, Peter, as if trying to piece together a puzzle with missing parts. Her voice was a mix of hurt and confusion, and it was clear she was really upset with Peter's revelation. Peter, trying to smooth things over, urged her to calm down. He began to explain the reasons behind our unexpected decision, but let's backtrack a bit to give you the full picture. My husband Jason and I have been working remotely for a while. We loved the flexibility it gave us, being able to work in a tranquil environment, taking breaks whenever it felt right. It was our little slice of paradise. Then my mother-in-law moved in. Don't get me wrong, we were financially okay, so hosting her wasn't a problem. But soon questions began. Why aren't you two going out to work? She'd ask, eyeing us with a hint of disapproval. Her questions felt like a heavy weight, pulling me down into a sea of doubt. This wasn't new. When she first brought it up, we tried explaining the concept of remote work to her, but it didn't quite stick. But aren't you just playing around? She would challenge us, her tone dripping with skepticism. I've mentioned this to Jason too. Are you even listening? When will you start taking life seriously? What about your future? It was clear she couldn't wrap her head around our lifestyle. I'm so worried. Did I make a mistake coming here? Maybe I should have gone to Peter's place, she'd often lament. Speaking of Peter, he's Jason's brother, married to Olivia, a woman of considerable wealth. Peter's living quite the comfortable life, thanks to Olivia's fortune. We were asked to keep this detail from my mother-in-law, on Peter's request. This situation set the stage for our shocking announcement and the whirlwind of emotions that followed. It was a moment we'll never forget, revealing layers of misunderstanding and concern within our family dynamic. In our family, Peter's home is often talked about as if it's a grand palace from a fairy tale, sprawling and magnificent, quite unlike our modest abode. My mother-in-law frequently dreamt aloud about moving to Peter's place, which she fancied would eventually become her residence. She'd sit by the window, daydreaming of the day Peter would arrive to whisk her away to his mansion. Deep down, we all knew that day was unlikely to ever come. This wasn't just a baseless assumption. There was a time when Jason, trying to look out for his mother's best interest, suggested to Peter that perhaps she could live with him, given his ample space and resources. Peter, however, was quick to dismiss the idea. And so, our living arrangement continued as it was, with my mother-in-law often lamenting our remote work as unemployment, unable to grasp the concept of our digital careers. We had grown to accept her views as part of our daily life, not expecting much to change. Then, an unexpected call from Peter threw everything into disarray. He announced he'd be visiting that weekend and promptly ended the call, leaving no room for questions or preparation. Jason and I were taken aback by his abruptness, which hadn't diminished over the years. Our conversation caught my mother-in-law's attention, her face lighting up with hope and anticipation. She was convinced Peter's visit was for her, to finally take her to live in his castle. "Please, help me get ready to move," she urged, pulling Jason towards her room to start packing. Jason, caught in a difficult position, tried to gently correct her misunderstanding. "Mom, Peter didn't mention coming to take you with him. It seems he's visiting because of something else. But she was dismissive, holding on to her conviction that her departure was imminent. He just forgot to say it, Jason. I'm tired of being here, feeling like nothing more than a housekeeper in waiting. But I won't let that be my fate. We were perplexed by her reaction, unable to grasp where her fears and accusations were stemming from, especially since she had been part of our home without any demands or expectations of servitude. Her paranoia and disappointment painted a stark contrast to the reality of our life together, highlighting a chasm of misunderstanding we had yet to bridge. My mother-in-law enjoyed a rather comfortable life with us. She woke up at her leisure, wasn't expected to help with household chores, and even received some spending money from us. Despite this, when she expressed a desire to leave, we respected her wishes. We packed her belongings and awaited the arrival of my brother-in-law and his wife. Their visit over the weekend brought a sense of unease. The moment they stepped through our door, something felt off. Their smiles were too forced, their greetings too calculated. My instincts told me trouble was brewing. As if on cue, my mother-in-law appeared, her eyes gleaming with what seemed like triumph. She wasted no time in painting herself as the aggrieved party. "Oh, you finally come, you won't believe it. Lisa can hardly manage any housework, and Jason completely neglects me. It's dreadful here," she lamented, pushing past us to greet her son with open arms. Jason quickly came to our defense, explaining, "That's not true at all. She's been living comfortably here, not needing to lift a finger, and enjoying the meals and space freely." But my brother-in-law seemed unconvinced, suggesting, perhaps out of loyalty or misunderstanding, that Jason and I might be mistreating her without even realizing it. My mother-in-law nodded along, playing the role of the victim perfectly. Despite our frustration, Jason and I kept our cool and welcomed everyone to the living room for tea, trying to maintain a semblance of hospitality amidst the tension. The situation took an absurd turn when my mother-in-law demanded tea, acting as though it was outrageous that she might make it herself, especially in front of her visiting son. Her performance included tears, accusations, and an air of martyrdom that left me too shocked to even respond. After serving the tea, the atmosphere shifted abruptly when Peter revealed the real reason for their visit. "We've sold our house," he said, visibly uneasy. This bombshell left everyone stunned, but none more so than my mother-in-law, whose face fell at the news. "Why would you do such a thing? Weren't you supposed to be here to take me with you?" she demanded, her voice a mix of confusion and accusation. Peter attempted to soothe the situation, explaining their dire financial straits. The sale of their home had been a desperate measure to clear debts, and now, with no place to go, they were hoping to stay with us. This revelation changed everything, casting the day's earlier tensions in a new, sobering light. Peter shared with us, almost too casually, the reason behind his sudden visit. "I tried to start my own business, but it didn't take off. These things happen, right?" he said, managing to laugh off his predicament. Both Jason and I couldn't help but sigh deeply at his nonchalance. Despite the lighthearted way he spoke, the gravity of the situation was clear. "We just need a place to stay until we can find a new home. Please, we have nowhere else to turn," Peter pleaded, with his wife nodding in agreement beside him. Their faces were a picture of desperation. Faced with their plight, our initial frustration gave way to a reluctant understanding. Despite the complicated feelings swirling within us, the bottom line was they had no place to go. We agreed to let them stay, on the condition that it would be a temporary arrangement, lasting no more than a month. Peter, still in his oddly cheerful mood, agreed quickly and went off to prepare for their move. After their departure, the house fell silent, with my mother-in-law lost in thought. Jason and I wondered if she was still processing the shock of Peter's financial debacle. The next day, Peter and his wife's belongings arrived in droves, overwhelming us with their sheer volume. Where are we going to put all of this? We wondered aloud, facing a logistical nightmare. The idea of having to possibly sell some items or rent a storage unit was being seriously considered when my mother-in-law made a startling suggestion. "I've been thinking," she began, "having Peter here could secure our future. So why don't you two leave? You don't really contribute anything." Her words were sharp, and she specifically targeted me, suggesting that without me, there would be more room for Peter's belongings. She even went as far as to suggest that Jason and I should divorce to make space. Her proposal was shocking, and she looked expectantly at Jason for support. "What are you talking about?" Jason responded, his voice filled with disbelief at the turn of the conversation. However, before we could delve deeper into this outrageous suggestion, Peter and his wife walked in, greeted warmly by my mother-in-law. Despite the turmoil caused by her words, Jason decided to set the conversation aside for the moment and address the immediate issue of the clutter. Addressing his brother, Jason made it clear that the sheer amount of stuff was overwhelming. "You'll need to figure out what to do with all these things. Maybe sell some or rent a locker," he advised, trying to manage the situation as best as he could. Peter, however, didn't take well to this suggestion, showing a hint of annoyance. "These are important items. I can't just sell them. What if they get stolen or damaged in a locker? Are you going to be responsible for that?" This exchange highlighted the selfish streak in Peter, who seemed more concerned about his belongings than the strain their presence was putting on our living situation. Jason, trying to maintain peace, reminded him, "This is our home. It's only fair that you try to accommodate us while you're here. If the arrangements aren't to your liking, it might be best to find another place sooner rather than later." The conversation was abruptly interrupted by a shout from my mother-in-law, signaling another chapter in our ongoing domestic drama. In a moment that felt surreal, my mother-in-law made a declaration that took everyone by surprise. She boldly suggested that since Jason and I were apparently not content with Peter's situation, and what she perceived as our lack of contribution, it would be best if we left. According to her, we were nothing more than freeloaders, taking up space while Peter was attempting something ambitious with his business venture. Our remote work, she dismissed as mere idleness, an unnecessary presence in what she implied was her domain. The room fell silent, the words hanging heavy in the air. Jason and I exchanged looks of disbelief, unable to comprehend the audacity of her claims. Peter and his wife, Olivia, initially taken aback, quickly masked their surprise with smirks, seemingly warming up to the idea. "Yeah, that actually sounds like a good plan, Mom," Peter chimed in, with Olivia nodding in agreement. "It's a hassle finding a new place, so why not just stay here? Better yet, why don't you sell us this house? It would be much more convenient for us, especially since you seem uncomfortable with Lisa and Jason's presence." Their words struck us like a bolt from the blue, their audacity rendering us speechless. The notion of selling our home to them, on their terms, felt like a bizarre twist in an already strained conversation. My husband, gearing up to refute their outrageous proposal, was abruptly cut off by my mother-in-law, who seemed to take delight in the unity of Peter and Olivia's suggestion. She turned her triumphant gaze towards me, insinuating that a divorce would somehow validate their plan, allowing Jason to remain. Before I could muster a response, Jason's patience snapped. "How dare you speak like that? Lisa is not leaving," he asserted, his frustration boiling over. His outburst was met with a call for calm by my mother-in-law, who continued to press her point, insisting on the convenience of my absence. However, Jason had reached his limit. "You don't get it, do you? This is Lisa's house," he stated, a revelation that silenced the room. My mother-in-law, Peter, and Olivia were visibly shocked, their expressions frozen as Jason continued. "This is the home Lisa bought for us to start our life together." The air was thick with tension as the reality of the situation dawned on them. Our home, the very subject of their entitlement, was not theirs to claim or negotiate over. It was a testament to our shared life, our struggles, and our achievements, a place they had no right to challenge. In a moment filled with tension and disbelief, my mother-in-law challenged the reality of our household dynamics with a scoff, suggesting that traditionally, it should have been Jason, my husband, who took on the financial responsibilities of purchasing our home. Yet in our family, there were no such conventional roles. I had taken the lead, covering not just the mortgage, but all of my mother-in-law's living expenses and allowance, stepping in because her pension was modest and hardly enough for her to enjoy any semblance of financial freedom. Jason, with a look of frustration and disbelief, countered her outdated views, emphasizing that I had willingly shouldered these responsibilities to ensure her comfort and well-being. Despite his clear explanation, my mother-in-law laughed off the idea in disbelief, mockingly accusing me of spending my days idly and insisting that her allowance must be secretly funded by her own pension, given that, in her eyes, I couldn't possibly afford such generosity on my own. Her accusations escalated, boldly claiming that I was mishandling her pension and demanding that Jason divorce me on the spot, suggesting a future where he, along with Peter and Olivia, would be better off without my alleged deceit. Standing my ground, I refuted her baseless claims with tangible proof, my paycheck a testament to my success and independence. The document visibly shocked her and the others, silencing their unfounded allegations. I explained that not a penny of her pension had been touched for her living expenses since she moved in with us. If anything, it was her constant interference and unjustified demands that were the real issue, not my alleged incompetence or dishonesty. I stood firm, stating that if she found our arrangement so disagreeable, she was free to leave at any time. Jason, backing me up, addressed Peter and Olivia directly, reminding them that their stay was meant to be temporary and born out of necessity, not preference. His stern tone, a rare occurrence, visibly unnerved them, marking a clear boundary and expectation of respect within our home. Attempting to lighten the mood, or perhaps realizing the gravity of the situation, Peter made a flippant remark about the surprising amount I earned. Yet the undercurrent of tension remained, a clear reminder of the challenges and misunderstandings that had come to light, prompting a moment of reflection on respect, responsibilities, and the true meaning of family support. In a moment of unexpected warmth, Peter and his wife, Olivia, acknowledged the misunderstanding and misconceptions about me. "Maybe we could learn a thing or two from you," Peter said with a smile, suggesting that my business acumen was not only impressive, but also something worth emulating. Despite their newfound respect, my mother-in-law remained steadfast in her disdain, dismissing my contributions and insisting that both Jason and I were nothing more than obstacles in her and Peter's path to success. Her words were sharp, filled with a conviction that left us no choice but to confront the reality of our situation. "If that's how you see it, we'll find a new place to live," I said, the weight of our decision heavy in the air. "You'll have to manage the mortgage on your own. And remember, we won't be around to help if you find yourselves in over your heads." The thought of maintaining her lifestyle without our support seemed to strike a nerve with my mother-in-law, but her pride quickly overshadowed any signs of worry. As we stood firm in our decision, Peter and Olivia attempted to intervene, their earlier acknowledgement of my skills now mixed with panic at the thought of us actually leaving. However, my mother-in-law, ever determined, silenced their protests with a fierce glare and a challenge for Peter to prove himself as a future CEO by using her pension to start his own company. With her words echoing a finality, we decided it was best to sever our ties and move forward without them. In time, we transferred the house's mortgage to Peter's name and started anew, finding peace away from the constant criticism and unrealistic expectations. However, our respite was short-lived. One day, while settling into our routine in our new apartment, my mother-in-law's voice, now laced with desperation and regret, came through the phone. She was crying, revealing that Peter had taken her pension and vanished, leaving Olivia and her to face the consequences of their decisions alone. "Please, can you help us?" she pleaded. After calming her down, Jason sought to understand the full scope of Peter's disappearance. The cycle of decisions that led to this moment was a harsh reminder of the complexity of family dynamics and the consequences of pride and misunderstanding. In a heartbreaking turn of events, my mother-in-law revealed that she had entrusted her entire pension to Peter, hoping to support his entrepreneurial dreams. However, Peter's aspirations quickly turned to dust as he squandered the money on gambling, leaving nothing but despair in his wake. When she tried to confront him about his reckless actions, Peter vanished without a trace, unable to face the consequences of his decisions. Overwhelmed by emotion, my mother-in-law couldn't continue the conversation, so Olivia took over the call, her voice trembling with distress. She explained their dire situation. Peter's failed venture had led him to sell the house, and as a result, they were now estranged from their parents. Olivia's plea for help was a desperate attempt to salvage what little they had left of their lives. My husband's response was a mix of frustration and resignation. "I knew it," he said, a clear indication of his disappointment in Peter's actions. Despite Olivia's appeals, he made it clear that our assistance would not be forthcoming. We had warned them of the potential consequences before we parted ways, and now they were facing the harsh reality of their choices. My husband advised Olivia to report Peter missing to the authorities, emphasizing that their predicament was no longer our concern. After the call, my husband was adamant that they were experiencing the fallout of their own decisions. Although they reached out to us multiple times, seeking guidance on how to navigate their situation, we kept our involvement to a minimum, advising Olivia to contact the police for help with finding Peter. As it turned out, Peter's disappearance was linked to a far more serious issue than we had anticipated. He was arrested in another state for bank robbery, an act driven by desperation to clear his gambling debts. It wasn't his first run-in with the law, and this time, it seemed certain that he would face significant jail time. Olivia, now stranded with nowhere to turn, remained with my mother-in-law. The prospect of divorce from Peter, though likely among her least concerns, hung in the air as yet another decision she would have to face in the wake of this family tragedy. Olivia found herself navigating uncharted waters, having registered with a temporary job agency. Despite the challenges and being new to the workforce, she's managing to scrape by, making ends meet with her very first job. The situation at home grew more complicated when it came to light that Peter had not only squandered his own future, but also that of his mother. With her pension gone to cover Peter's gambling debts, my mother-in-law was forced into part-time work, a situation she never imagined she'd find herself in, to chip away at the mountain of debt left behind. While my husband and I felt a pang of sympathy for the difficult road Olivia and my mother-in-law were forced to walk, we stood firm in our decision to not provide assistance. We've chosen to sever ties, believing it's crucial for them to face and navigate these challenges on their own. This decision underscores a belief that sometimes experiencing life's sternest lessons is the only way to truly understand and appreciate its value. Despite the turmoil that followed my mother-in-law's stay with us, my husband and I have found solace in the return to our tranquil life. The events that unfolded served as a reminder of the unpredictable nature of life and the importance of making wise choices. As for Olivia and my mother-in-law, they're on a journey of their own, one that is undoubtedly tough, but also filled with opportunities for growth and redemption.
I stood quietly in the corner of the big ballroom, watching my sister spin around in her $25,000 wedding dress while my credit score slowly sank. The sparkling chandeliers lit up her shiny tiara, and her laughter echoed across the marble floor. It was the same laugh she used 2 months ago when she begged me to co-sign a loan for her. "My name is Barbara. I'm the responsible sister," The boring one. The one everyone depends on when there's a problem. And tonight, I'm also the one carrying a loan that feels like a ticking time bomb. Barbara, darling, why aren't you dancing? My mom, Margaret, asked. Her voice had that usual disappointed tone. She pointed toward the dance floor where Lily and her new husband, Kevin, were dancing like they were the only 3 people in the world. Someone has to make sure the vendors get paid, I said, tapping my tablet. Unless you want to handle the final payments? She scrunched her nose and adjusted her expensive shawl. That's her thing, sweetie, handling money. Lily's always been our creative one. I held back the words I'd been swallowing for 28 years. Instead, I smiled and looked at the loan document again, checking for the 100th time to make sure the clause was still there, hidden deep in the fine print like a trap. Remember when she first showed us the venue? My mom continued, thinking I was just lost in happy memories. She just knew it was the one, worth every penny. Every penny. All 80,000 of them. I remembered that day too, but not the way she did. Please, Barbara. Lily had cried that day, mascara running down her face. The bank won't approve us unless someone with good credit cosigns. You're the only one who can help. That's because I actually pay my bills, I had said. It's what family does, our dad had added from his chair, not even looking up from his newspaper. Your sister would do the same for you. I nearly laughed at that. Lily never did anything for anyone but herself. I swear I'll make every payment, Lily had begged, holding my hands. Kevin's business is about to take off. We're going to be rich. Please, please, please. Now, I watched Kevin whisper something in Lily's ear, making her giggle. Then he looked across the room, saw me, and raised his champagne glass with a wink. I raised my glass too, wondering if Kevin already knew about the clause in the loan. I also wondered if either of them had even read the contract before signing it. Just then, Mrs. Thomas, the wedding planner, appeared beside me. The photographer wants to know if we're still doing sunset photos on the terrace. Of course we are, Lily said, suddenly appearing and pulling Kevin along by the hand. Barbara, you're in them too. You have to be. You made all this happen. If only she knew how true that was. I let her pull me outside. The setting sun made everything glow, including Lily's flawless face as she posed near the railing. Our parents joined us, and the photographer arranged us all like we were dolls in a picture-perfect family. A perfect wedding. The Paris dreams. Closer together, the photographer called. Big smiles. This is a celebration. I smiled, thinking about the email I got that morning from Amy, my friend in the legal department. It's solid, she had written. The clause kicks in the moment they miss a payment. If they leave the country without setting up a plan, the full responsibility goes back to the original co-signers, your parents. They signed it too, remember? Oh, I remembered. I remembered every signature, every tear-filled plea, every guilt trip that led to this moment. One more, the photographer said. Everyone say happily ever after. Lily wrapped her arms around me, her breath smelling like champagne. I love you so much, sis. You're the best. The absolute best. Over her shoulder, I saw Kevin checking his phone. His face turned serious for a second before he slid it back into his pocket. 2 weeks ago, I had seen him book 2 one-way tickets to a country with no extradition agreement. He didn't know I knew. That night, back in my hotel room, I opened my laptop one last time. The loan document lit up the screen. All the signatures were there. Lily's fancy handwriting, Kevin's confident scribble, my parents' rushed scrawls, and my own neat name below them. The clause waited there like a sleeping snake. I touched the screen lightly. Let's see who pays now. My phone buzzed. A message from Lily. Thank you for everything. You're the best sister anyone could ask for. Love you forever. I didn't reply. Instead, I closed the laptop and poured myself a drink. The real wedding gift hadn't arrived yet, but it would. And I was ready to wait as long as it took to deliver it. 3 months later, I sat at my favorite coffee shop, staring at my phone's call history. 35 missed calls to Lily, 17 to Kevin, and 53 texts that no one answered. They're still ignoring you? Amy said, sitting down across from me and sliding over 3 fresh lattes. Huh, How many times have you checked Instagram today? I picked up my phone, opened the app, and showed Amy the screen. Lily's latest post was up. She and Kevin were smiling on a tropical beach, holding fancy drinks. The caption read, "Living our best life. Debt-free and following our destiny. Chakra blessed. New life. No regrets." Amy tapped her shiny nails on the table. "You knew they'd do this." "Knowing doesn't make it hurt less," I replied. Then I opened my messages. Look what my mom sent me this morning. The text read, "The bank called again. Please handle this, Barbara. You know how your dad's blood pressure gets when he's stressed." "Have you told them about the clause yet?" Amy asked. "Not yet. I'm waiting." My phone buzzed. A new voicemail from Lily. I played it on speaker. "Hey sis. Sorry I've been hard to reach. The Wi-Fi here is just terrible. Anyway, about those payment reminders you keep sending, I know you'll figure it out. You're so good with money stuff. Don't work too hard. Love you." Amy raised an eyebrow. The nerve of her. "Wait for it," I said, holding up a finger. The message continued. "Oh, and could you stop calling so much? It feels kind of desperate. Kevin says it's messing with our vibe. Thanks. Kisses." I deleted the voicemail while Amy whispered something rude under her breath. "You sure you want to go through with this?" she asked. "Legally, you're in the clear. Morally, let them sink." "It's not about watching them sink," I said, opening my email. "It's about making sure they don't walk away dry." My phone buzzed again, another text from my mom. "Barbara, please call me. The bank is getting very serious." I showed Amy the email I'd drafted for the loan agency. It had the contract attached, with the clause clearly highlighted. I also included proof that Lily and Kevin had left the country. "Send it," Amy said firmly. "Stop dragging this out." I hesitated, my finger hovering over the send button. "Once you do this, you'll finally be free," she added, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Remember what they did to you, your dad's medical bills, the college fund they used for Lily's art school, the down payment for her first car." Just then, my phone lit up with another Instagram notification. Lily had posted again. "Some people just can't handle seeing others living their dreams. You are toxic. Family boundaries. Blessed." I hit send. "Done," I said. I felt strangely empty inside. "Now we wait," Amy said, lifting her coffee cup. "To karma," she added. "To contracts," I replied, tapping my cup against hers. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, watching the sunset through the window. Then my phone rang. It was Christian, my ex-boyfriend. "I just saw Lily's posts," Christian said without any small talk. "Are you okay?" "Why wouldn't I be?" I replied calmly. Christian had been there during the worst times, when I drained my savings to pay for my dad's heart surgery. He saw me struggle while Lily went on a surprise vacation to Europe. "Because you always take care of everyone," he said gently. "And no one takes care of you." I thought about the email I had sent, the one with the clause that would soon land in my parents' laps. "That's changing now," I said. "Good," he replied. "It's about time." After we ended the call, I opened my laptop and checked my inbox. The loan agency had already replied. "Dear Miss Barbara, we confirm we've received your documents regarding the liability clause. Our legal team is reviewing and will take the next steps. Expect contact within 72 hours. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Kevin. "Real nice, Barbara. Lily's crying. Hope you're happy." I typed back. "You should have read the fine print." Then I blocked both Lily and Kevin. I poured myself a glass of wine and opened a folder on my computer. Inside were years of records, receipts, bank transfers, proof of every dollar I gave my family. The total could have bought me a house. But instead, it brought me this moment, finally standing up to the people who had taken me for granted for so long. My mother's old words echoed in my mind. "It's what family does." I smiled into my wine glass. "Yes, Mother," I whispered. "This is exactly what family does." I remembered the day I helped write that clause. It was 2 months before the wedding. I was sitting in Amy's living room, surrounded by takeout containers and piles of paperwork. She had her lawyer friend on speakerphone. "You want this to be airtight," the lawyer said. "Something they won't notice, but that holds up in court." Amy refilled my wine glass. "Tell him about the medical bills again." $30,000, I said. Everything I saved gone. All because Lily needed a soul-searching trip the same month my dad needed surgery. "And the college fund?" Amy added. "Borrowed," I said. "Never paid back. Lily's art school mattered more than my MBA." The lawyer thought for a second. "We can make this work. The trick is to keep it simple so they won't question it, but strong enough to be legally binding." Now, sitting at my desk at work, I looked at the final version we had written. If the main borrower leaves the country without arranging a payment plan, all responsibility goes to the original co-signers, who agree to pay the remaining amount. Simple.
Clear.
Powerful. My office phone rang. Barbara speaking.
"It's Amy," she said.
"Just got the update from legal. Your parents are being contacted today." I checked my email, and just like I thought, there was a message from the loan company. As per Section 6.9 of the agreement, the responsibility has been transferred to Austin and Jerry. They will be contacted within 48 hours. "How long do you think until?" Amy started to ask, but then my phone lit up. My mother was calling. "Gotta go," I said. "It's starting." I let it ring 5 times before picking up. "Hello, Mother." "What is this?" she shouted. "These people are saying we owe $80,000. This has to be a mistake." "No mistake," I said. "Check your email. I sent you the contract. You signed it." I could hear her shuffling papers. "We didn't. We only signed as witnesses." "Read Section 6.9, I said calmly. More rustling, then silence. "You tricked us," she whispered. "No, Mother. I learned from the best. Remember what you always told me? It's what family does." "But your father, his blood pressure." "He'll be fine," I said. Just like he was when I paid for his surgery and Lily was off posting selfies from Paris. "That was different," she said. "She needed to find herself." "Yes, I remember. And now you need to find $80,000. She started crying.
Her tears used to break me.
I'd always rushed to fix things for her. But not anymore. Now they just made me feel tired. "We'll call Lily," she sobbed. "She'll fix this." I laughed. "Good luck. Her number's been disconnected."
"This isn't you, Barbara."
"You're not this cold. Actually, this is me. The real me. The one who's done being treated like a bank." The line went quiet, except for her shaky breathing. Then she spoke softly. "What do you want?" "I want you to pay the debt you signed for. I want you to face the consequences. I want you to know how it feels to be responsible just once." "But we're your parents."
"Yes."
"And you taught me everything I know about family loyalty." I hung up and turned my phone off. Through my office window, I saw the city below. People were busy with their lives, dealing with their own struggles and betrayals. Then my computer pinged. A new email. It was from Lily. A new email address. "You're controlling. You always have to win. Happy now? Mom's a mess, Dad's chest hurts, and it's all your fault. I never should have trusted you. You're dead to me." I forwarded the email to Amy with just 3 words, worth every penny. Her reply came back fast. "Your sister's about to learn that karma accepts Venmo." I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out an old photo. Our last family vacation. Lily in the center like always. Our parents smiling at her. And me, standing off to the side, checkbook in hand, paying the hotel bill. My office door opened. My junior associate peeked in, looking nervous. "Miss Barbara, I need a favor. Could you co-sign on the Miller account? It's just a formality." I looked at him, then at the photo, and then back at him. "No," I said. "I don't co-sign anything anymore." He blinked, clearly surprised by how direct I was. "But it's just a standard form." "So is paying your own bills," I said, turning back to my computer. "Try that first." As he walked out, I picked up my phone and turned it back on. There were 16 missed calls from my parents, 7 new emails from Lily, and 1 text from Amy. "How does it feel?" I typed back, "Like freedom." The collection agency didn't waste time. Just 2 days after the clause kicked in, my mother showed up at my office without warning. Her mascara was smeared from crying. "They're threatening to put a lien on our house," she said, dropping into the chair across from me. "Your childhood home, Barbara." I kept typing without looking up. "You mean the same house you remortgaged to pay for Lily's art school? That childhood home. That was different. She had potential," she said. "And I didn't." I looked her in the eye. "Is that why you took my college fund?" "We borrowed it," she said weakly. "Borrowing means you return it." I pulled up an old spreadsheet. "Would you like to see the exact amount you still owe, with interest?" My office phone buzzed. "Miss Barbara, your 3 p.m. is here." "Tell them I'll be 7 minutes," I replied. I turned back to my mother. "The collection agency is being quite fair. They'll accept monthly payments on the $80,000. She wiped her tears with a fancy handkerchief, probably another gift from Lily, bought with someone else's money. "Your father can't sleep. He keeps checking our bank accounts, trying to find money that just isn't there." "Like I did when he needed surgery," I said. She flinched. "That was years ago. Why are you still holding on to that?" "Because someone has to remember. Someone has to keep the receipts." My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Mom's crying because of you again. You're so controlling. You always need to win. Happy now?" I showed the message to my mother. "Your perfect daughter sends her regards." "She's scared," my mom said softly. "She's still young. She's 29. I was 25 when I paid for Dad's surgery." "But you're stronger," she said. "You can handle things." I leaned back in my chair, letting that hang in the air. "That's interesting, Mother. Tell me more about how being used makes me strong." She stood up quickly, her chair scraping the floor. "I didn't raise you to be this heartless. You didn't raise me at all. You were too busy spoiling Lily." "We'll lose everything," she whispered.
No.
"You'll lose everything because you signed that contract. That's the difference." "What do you want from us?" she asked. I finally smiled. "I want you to deal with the results of your choices. I want you to know what it feels like when no one comes to save you." My phone buzzed again. A video call from Lily. I answered and put it on speaker. "You evil witch," she yelled, her face red with anger. "Mom just called me crying. How could you do this to them?" "The same way you always did it to me," I said calmly. "Except I used a contract instead of fake tears." "We're family." "Exactly," I said. "And this is what family does, remember?" Behind her, I saw Kevin pacing and talking fast on his phone. He looked stressed. "Visa problems?" I asked, pretending to be innocent. Lily's eyes widened. "How did you?" "It's amazing what happens when your credit crashes and there's an international debt notice in your name." My mother gasped. "You didn't." "I didn't do anything," I said. "Consequences. Wasn't that your favorite word, Mother? Right before asking me to fix another one of Lily's messes?" Lily looked like she might cry. "They're going to cancel our visas. Kevin's business deals are falling apart. Everything we built." "You built nothing," I cut in. "You ran away from your bills and your responsibilities, like always. The only difference now is there's no one left to clean it up for you." "Girls," my mother pleaded, "we can fix this. Barbara, if you just pay." "No," I stood up. "My 3 p.m. is waiting. You both know where the door is." "Please," Lily cried. "I'm your sister. They're your parents. Funny how that only matters when you need something." I ended the call and turned to my mother. "The collection agency's number is on the letter they sent. I suggest you call them before they call you again." She walked to the door, then turned back. "You'll regret this one day, when you need your family." "I've needed my family many times," I said. "Where were you?" After she left, I sat in my quiet office. My hands were shaking a little. My phone buzzed. A text from Amy. "Drinks tonight? You look like you need them." I typed back. "Bring wine. And the contract, I want to frame it." Another text popped up, this one from my father. "We didn't think you'd actually go through with it." I replied with just one line. "That's always been your problem." Then I turned off my phone, straightened my desk, and called in my 3 p.m. meeting. I had real work to do. Bills don't pay themselves. Just ask my family. The family dinner was my mother's idea. Thursday dinner, like old times, she had said on the phone, sounding sweet but fake. We need to talk about everything like adults. I arrived right on time. My parents were already sitting at the table. All my favorite childhood dishes were laid out like a trap made of memories. Your father made your favorite lasagna, my mother said as she served me a big portion. Remember how you used to help him in the kitchen? I remember buying his heart medicine right after making that lasagna, I said, putting down my fork. Let's skip the memories and talk about why we're really here. My dad cleared his throat. The bank is getting serious. Banks usually are, especially when people don't pay them, I replied. We've looked at some options, my mom jumped in. We could sell the vacation house. The one I was supposed to inherit? I said, laughing. You mean the one you remortgaged to pay for Lily's wedding? You're not being fair, my dad said quietly. I pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. Let's talk about fair. Inside was a spreadsheet. Every dollar I ever gave them, carefully tracked with dates and reasons. Page 1. Dad's medical bills, $30,000. Page 2. Lily's art school, $50,000 from my college savings. Page 3. Lily's first car, $10,000. Should I keep going? I asked. My mom pushed the folder away. We're not here to dig up the past. No, I said. You're here because the collection agency won't stop calling. We raised you, my dad said. We gave you everything. You gave Lily everything, I said. I worked for everything I have. My phone buzzed. A text from Amy. How's the ambush dinner going? Before I could answer, my mom reached across the table and held my hand. Sweetheart, please. We can fix this together. For the family. The family? I pulled my hand back. Where was this family when I worked 2 jobs to pay for Dad's surgery while Lily was posting pictures from Europe? She was finding herself, my mom said softly. And now she's lost herself in another country, along with $80,000 of my money, I replied. My dad stood up, his face red. We didn't think you'd actually use the contract. We thought you'd understand. You thought I'd let it go again, I said. That I'd cover for them again. Family takes care of each other, my mom said. I stood up too, pushing away my untouched plate. Funny how that only works when I'm the one giving. We'll lose the house, my dad said quietly. Then sell the vacation house, I replied. But that was supposed to be your inheritance, my mom said. My inheritance? I raised my phone and showed them Lily's Instagram post, her and Kevin at the beach house last summer. You mean this inheritance? The one you let them stay in for free? They looked at each other, clearly feeling guilty. You knew, I said slowly. You knew they were planning to leave the country. My mom didn't say a word. That silence was all the answer I needed. You helped them plan it, I said. You thought I'd just pay off their debt, like I always do. You're stronger than Lily, my dad said quietly. You can handle these things. Not anymore, I said, picking up my purse. Call the collection agency. Set up a payment plan. Sell whatever you have to. I'm done handling your problems. Barbara, please, my mom called as I walked to the door. What will people think? I turned and looked at her. They'll think you're finally dealing with the consequences of your choices. How does that feel? Then I stepped outside. I sat in my car for a while, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, Kevin, using a new phone. Got your little message about the visa issues.
Cute.
But you forgot something. I know things about your company. Things that could ruin your career. Want to rethink your move? I forwarded the message to Amy with 3 words. Time for phase 2. She replied right away. Let's bury them. Back at home, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. I clicked on a folder labeled insurance. Inside were saved copies of emails Lily and Kevin had sent, messages about how they planned to skip out on the loan, talk about fleeing the country, and proof that my parents knew and went along with it. I started writing a new email to the loan agency's fraud team. I have information about a planned loan default. As my phone started ringing, my mother again, I ignored it and hit send. Sometimes, I whispered into the silence of my apartment. The best family dinner is the last one. It didn't take long for the tip to blow up. The next day, I was at my desk when Amy rushed into my office, holding up her tablet. "It's happening," she said, turning the screen to show me. Social media was full of the story. Someone had shared parts of the loan papers on a financial whistleblower site, and it was going viral. Lily's latest beach photo was flooded with comments. "Must be nice to live in luxury while avoiding your debt. How do you sleep at night, knowing your sister is paying for your life?" Financial frauds pretending to live their best life.
My phone buzzed again. "Kevin."
"What did you do?" "Our sponsors are pulling out." I typed back. "I didn't do anything. The truth did." Another notification came through, an email from my dad. The subject: "We need to talk." I opened it. "Meeting at the house. 8 p.m.
"Come alone."
Amy read over my shoulder. "It's a trap," she said. I shut my laptop. "Maybe, but I'm going anyway." "You want backup?"
"No."
"It's time to end this." The house looked smaller than I remembered, its shadow long in the evening light. My father was sitting alone on the porch steps, looking much older than 63. "Your mother's not here," he said as I walked up. "I asked her to let me handle this." "Handle what?" I asked. He pulled out a thick stack of papers. "We found these in Lily's old room. She left them when they ran." I looked through them, printouts of emails, bank records, and texts. A clear trail of their plan to steal the money and disappear. "You knew," I said quietly. "You knew all along." He rubbed his face. We thought you wouldn't go through with it. You never do. You always forgive. You always fix things." "Not anymore," I said. "The collection agency called again," he continued. "They're talking about fraud. Criminal charges." I looked him in the eye. "Actions have consequences, Dad." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. "She's your sister. And I'm your daughter," I said. "Did that ever matter to you?" Silence hung between us.
Heavy.
Years of unspoken pain sitting right there between us. "We got a call from Lily an hour ago," he finally said. "Their visas are being canceled. Kevin's business partners are pulling out. They're stuck." "Karma doesn't whisper," I said. "It hits loud." "Can't you stop this?" he asked. I sat down beside him on the steps but kept my distance. "Do you remember when I was 17 and wanted to go to that summer coding camp?" I asked. He stared ahead, saying nothing. "You said we couldn't afford it." 1 month later, Lily said she needed a new laptop for her photography hobby. "You got her the best one money could buy." "Barbara, I'm not fixing this," I said, standing up. "I'm done fixing everything." My phone buzzed. A video call from Lily. I answered it, holding the screen so my father could see. "They're freezing our accounts." Lily was crying, mascara running down her face. "Kevin's business people are talking about fraud. What's happening?" "The truth is happening," I said calmly. "How's that going for you?" "We're stuck here. The embassy won't help. Our credit cards don't work." "Sounds like a you problem." She spotted our dad in the frame and screamed, "Tell her to stop this." He looked at both of us, confused and helpless. I don't know how." "That's right," I said. "For once, you don't know how to fix something for her." Weird feeling, isn't it? Lily's face twisted with anger. "You evil, jealous." I ended the call. My father stood slowly, still holding the stack of papers in his shaking hands. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "I want you to sit in this mess you helped create. I want you to feel what it's like when no one rushes in to save you. I want you to understand what you did to me all these years. We loved you."
"No."
"You used me. There's a difference."
My phone buzzed again.
A message from Amy. "The fraud department wants to schedule an interview. Ready for the final nail?" I looked at my father, this man who always took the easy way out, who let my mother and sister use me for years. "I have to go," I said. "I have a meeting about fraud charges." "Please," he whispered. "We're family." I paused by my car. That stopped meaning anything the day you chose her over me for the last time. As I drove off, I looked in the mirror and saw him still standing there, holding those papers, all alone in the dark outside the house where I had learned one painful truth. Blood means nothing when love only flows one way. The collection agency didn't waste time. Within a week, they started taking my parents' assets. From my office window, I saw the listing for their vacation house go live. The same house I once dreamed of inheriting, now listed for a quick sale. A few days later, my mother showed up at my office without warning. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes were red from crying. "They're taking everything," she said. "Not everything," I replied. I kept typing on my computer and said, "I'm not doing anything to you. This is just the result of what you put at risk." "Why are you doing this to us?" my mother asked. "I'm not," I said calmly. "The contract is." She slammed her hand on my desk. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." I looked up and met her eyes. "Like how you looked at me when I begged you not to take my college fund." "That was different." "You always say that." But it wasn't different. It was just another time you chose Lily over me. My phone buzzed. An email popped up from the fraud investigation team. "Interview scheduled with Lily and Kevin via video call. Your presence is requested." "They're investigating Lily for fraud?" my mother whispered, reading over my shoulder. "She could go to jail." "She should have thought of that before planning to run away from her debts," I said. My mother sat down in the chair across from me, looking shocked. "How did you become so cold?" "I learned from the best." I turned my screen toward her and showed Lily's latest social media post. It was a video, Lily crying and talking about being hurt by a toxic family. "She's scared," my mom said. "No, she's manipulating again," I replied. "Only this time it won't work."
My phone rang.
It was Amy. "Turn on the news," she said. "No hello." I opened a live news stream from a local business channel. Kevin was being escorted out of a meeting by security. The headline at the bottom of the screen read, "Local startup founder under investigation for international fraud." My mom covered her mouth. "Oh God." "Actions and consequences," I said quietly. "Funny how that works." "They're stranded," she said softly. "Their visas are gone. Their accounts are frozen." "Like how my bank accounts were empty after I paid for Dad's surgery," I said. "When I lived on ramen for 3 months while Lily posted pictures from Paris." The office door opened. My dad walked in, looking tired and defeated. "We sold the vacation house," he said. "Below market price, but it'll cover part of the debt." "Congratulations," I said. "You're finally learning about financial responsibility." Only took 63 years. "Barbara," my mom said, "we can still fix this. As a family." "We were never a family," I replied. "We were just a support system for Lily. There's a big difference."
My phone buzzed again.
A message from an unknown number. "This is Kevin. Please, we're desperate. The embassy won't help. Lily's having panic attacks. Name your price." I showed the message to my parents. Now he wants to make a deal. Interesting how people suddenly want to talk when the money runs out. "What are you going to do?" my dad asked. I started typing. "My price." I said out loud, "Everything you took from me, plus interest. Tell him to calculate it." "I'll wait." "They don't have that kind of money," my mom said, panicked. "Neither did I replied. "Not when you took my college fund. Not when Dad needed surgery. Not when Lily needed bail, that one time. But somehow I found a way." My computer pinged again, another email from the fraud investigators, asking for more documents. I opened the folder labeled receipts. "I have a meeting to get ready for," I said, standing up. "You can let yourselves out." "Wait," my father said. "The house, they're talking about putting a lien on it." "Then you better start packing," I replied. My mother broke down into tears. Real ones this time, not the fake cries I grew up hearing whenever she wanted something. "Why did you do this to us?" she sobbed. I walked to the door and opened it. "You did this to yourselves." I just put it in writing. After they left, I sat back down and checked my email. Lily had sent a long, messy message, one of her usual apologies, the kind she only sent when she wanted help. I didn't read it. I deleted it right away. Amy appeared in the doorway. "Ready for the fraud interview tomorrow?" Ready to end this, I said. They're your family, she said softly. No, I answered, pulling up the final piece of proof, photos of my parents helping Lily pack her bags 3 days before the wedding. They're just people I share DNA with. Real family wouldn't have done this.
My phone buzzed again.
A text from Lily.
I'm sorry.
I really mean it this time. Please help us. I replied with 5 simple words. Sorry doesn't pay back $80,000. Then I turned off my phone, opened the fraud case files, and started preparing my statement. Tomorrow was the final nail, the one that would end not only the case, but every last tie they had ever used to pull me back into their lies. This time, I would end the story my way. The beach was quiet. Just me and the seagulls. I sat on the sand, holding the final notice from the collection agency. Debt resolved through asset sales.
Case closed.
My phone buzzed. A message from Amy, a news article. Local couple caught trying to sneak across the border. Now in custody. I smiled. Lily and Kevin had tried to re-enter the country through Italy. It didn't work. Another buzz. A message from my mother. They're being held for questioning.
Please help.
I typed back. New phone. Who's this? The wind blew, scattering her next 5 messages across the sand before I could even read them. I didn't try to pick them up. Then my laptop chimed. An email from the fraud team. Thank you for your help. Charges have been filed. Good. I whispered to the waves. A shadow fell across my screen. I looked up. My father stood there, wearing a suit that now looked too big for him. He sat down beside me in the sand, slow and heavy. The house is sold, he said. We're moving into an apartment next week. Downsizing can be healthy, I said.
Your mother, he paused.
She's not handling it well. And he trailed off, picked up a handful of sand, and let it fall between his fingers. I'm not here to ask for anything, he finally said. I'm here to say you were right, my dad said. I closed my laptop. About everything, he continued. We failed you. We let Lily drain you dry. We weren't parents to you. We were just helping her take from you. His voice cracked. Took you long enough to realize, I said. I saw the spreadsheet, he added, the one with all the money you gave us over the years. Did you know the total is almost the same as what your mother and I just lost in assets? Karma's good at math, I said quietly. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. We found this in Lily's old room. It's addressed to you, dated the day before the wedding. I opened it. It was a note in Lily's handwriting. Dear Elle, by the time you read this, we'll be gone. Thanks for being such a reliable ATM all these years. Don't worry, Mom and Dad will guilt you into fixing this too. They always do. Love. Lily. She never saw you as a sister, my dad said softly. And we didn't treat you like a daughter. We treated you like a solution. I folded the note carefully. And now? I asked. Now we see you as someone we lost because of what we did, he said. He stood up and brushed the sand off his pants. I'm not asking you to forgive us. I just wanted you to know you were right. My phone buzzed. A message from Amy. Holy, Lily and Kevin are facing federal charges. Your parents' statement sealed it. I looked up at him. You testified against them? We told the truth, he said simply. Finally. He turned to leave, then paused. That spreadsheet, the total amount you gave us, it could have bought this beach house. It did, I said, motioning to the beautiful home behind us. I closed the deal this morning. His eyes widened. You bought the vacation house we had to sell?
Yes.
Below market value because you needed to sell it fast. I stood and dusted off my legs. Funny how things come full circle. He nodded once, as if he finally understood. Then he walked away. I watched him disappear down the beach. He looked smaller than ever before. My phone lit up again. A video call from Lily from a detention center. I answered. They're charging us with fraud, she cried. Mom and Dad testified. How could they? How could you leave me with $80,000 in debt? That's different, she added. We're family. Not anymore, I said. I held up my keys. Remember this view? The beach house you loved? It's mine now. Legally. Forever. and you're never stepping foot inside it. You. I ended the call and blocked the number. Amy appeared at the top of the stairs leading down to the beach, holding 2 champagne glasses. Ready to celebrate the new house? She asked. Almost, I said. I pulled up my banking app. Everything was in the black. Every account in my name. No cosigners. No guilt. No family debt. To karma, Amy said, handing me a glass. To contracts, I said, smiling. I smiled and added, and to finally choosing myself. We clinked our glasses as the sun set behind my new beach house, lighting everything in soft golden colors that felt like justice. My phone stayed quiet. No more calls about family emergencies. No more guilt. No more manipulation. Just peace. A home in my name. And the sound of waves, gently washing the past away. Sometimes revenge doesn't shout. Sometimes it shows up in quiet ways in legal papers and property titles. Sometimes it's simply closing the door on people who only saw you as the one to fix their mess. And sometimes it feels just like this. Like freedom.